Number 5. The Dudley House. Gideon Dudley settled in this house in 1747 on land that was once a Mohawk Indian tribal ground. The surrounding forest was named Dark Entry. Many people are said to have vanished into the forest, while many others who have lived in there have gone insane. People who visit the forest today claim to hear screams coming from deeper in the forest. Visitors to the area have even had the sensation of being pushed by unseen hands, scratched, and witnessed orbs. An anonymous person who got close to the house claimed to have heard manic banging on one of the windows from the inside. He couldn't see who or what it was, as the blinds on the other side were down. However, he could see the blinds being pressed into the window with each bang. Now owned by the Dark Entry Forest Association, it is heavily patrolled by state and local authorities who warn that anyone visiting the site will be arrested. Number 4. The Harlow House. In 1932, 42-year-old Hollywood producer Paul Byrne married 21-year-old Hollywood starlet Jean Harlow. 2 months later, Byrne died under mysterious circumstances in the couple's home. After crime scene tampering from high-level studio executives, his death was ruled a suicide, though suspicions fell on his ex-wife, who committed suicide a day after his death. Jean would die 5 years later of renal failure, and the house later became the home of Sharon Tate, who claimed to have seen Byrne's ghost on the grounds. Sharon Tate, as you might know, was savagely murdered by members of the Manson family. People who have gone to visit the house or just to see it up close in person have reported seeing shadowy figures standing by the windows, and at other times feeling a ghostly presence surround them. Number 3. The Connecticut Funeral Home. Built in 1916, this suburban residential home was used as a funeral home from the 1930s until it was purchased by the Snedeker family of upstate New York in 1986. Upon moving in, the Snedekers found various mortuary items, such as coffin handles and a blood drainage pit. And a series of supernatural phenomena showed up next. First, it started out with just doors and windows opening and closing. Then it got much more horrifying. They would wake up at night to screams coming from around the house, or cries coming from inside closets. The oldest son, who was at the time in the middle of radiation treatment, began to exhibit radical personality shifts, becoming withdrawn and angry. He began writing poetry with necrophilic themes, and during one intense episode, he attacked his cousin with the intent to rape her. His family had him arrested and taken for an evaluation, where he was pronounced schizophrenic. He was removed from the house and seemed to get better, until returning. They moved out sometime that same year. Number 2. The Summerwind House. Located on the shores of West Bay Lake in the far northeast regions of Wisconsin are the ruins of a once grand mansion that was called Summerwind. The house is long gone now, but the memories remain, as do the stories and legends of the inexplicable events that once took place here. The mansion was built in 1916 by Robert P. Lamont as a summer home for he and his family. Nestled on the shores of the lake, the house caught the cool breezes of northern Wisconsin and provided a comfortable place for Lamont to escape the pressures of everyday life in Washington, D.C., as he would later go on to serve as Secretary of Commerce under President Herbert Hoover. But life was not always perfect at the summer home, as legends have it. One night, the basement door began to rattle, and Lamont, thinking it was an intruder, actually fired a pistol through the door twice. It turned out it was not an intruder, however, but rather a ghost. The bullet holes in the basement door from the kitchen remained for many years. Upon the death of Robert Lamont, the house was sold a couple times. It seemed that nothing strange really happened there besides Lamont's encounter with a ghostly intruder until the early 1970s. It was in this period that the family living in the house was nearly killed, supposedly by ghosts. Arnold Hinshaw, his wife Ginger, and their 6 children moved into Summerwind in the early part of the 1970s. They would only reside in the house for 6 months, but it would be an eventful period of time. From the day that they moved in, they knew strange things were going on in the house. It had been vacant for some time, but it had apparently been occupied by otherworldly visitors. The Hinshaws and their children immediately started to report vague shapes and shadows flickering down the hallways. They also claimed to hear mumbled voices in darkened, empty rooms. When they would walk inside, the sounds would quickly stop. Most alarming was the ghost of the woman who was often seen floating back and forth just past some French doors that led off from the dining room. Windows and doors that were closed would reopen on their own. One particular window, which proved especially stubborn, would raise and lower itself at all hours. Out of desperation, Arnold drove a heavy nail through the window casing and it finally stayed closed. Strange phenomena continued to occur all the way until the family moved out. Number 1. On a quiet residential street in a small town sits an old white frame house. On a dark evening, the absence of lights and sounds are the first indication to visitors that this house is different from the other homes that surround it. Upon closer inspection, you'll notice its doors and windows are tightly closed and covered. An outhouse in the backyard suggests that this house does not occupy a place in the 21st century, but somehow belongs in another era or story. A weather-beaten sign hanging from the decrepit front porch warns rather than welcomes. This house is known as the Murder House. The walls still protect the identity of the killer or killers who bludgeoned to death the entire family of Josiah Moore and 2 overnight guests on June 10, 1912. Almost 97 years later, the house's secret continues to draw many visitors to the door. To some, it seems to be speaking. Visits by paranormal investigators have provided audio, video, and photographic proof of paranormal activity. Tours of the house have actually been cut short by children's voices, falling lamps, moving ladders, and flying objects. Physics seem to have confirmed the presence of spirits dwelling in the home, and many have claimed to communicated with them.
Kevin Wynn, who was 25 at the time, went missing in the early hours of December 9, 2018. His family said he was kicked out of a bar called the Brass Rail on Broadway after an altercation, and that's the last they've seen or heard from him. Family, friends, and strangers have been hoping to find him or hear from him ever since. The following Sunday, nearly 150 volunteers and family members gathered at Lakeside Park to continue the search. The family searched the banks of the St. Joseph and St. Mary's rivers, and also the area around the Brass Rail. The following Thursday, they found his glasses broken in the parking lot of the bar. Kevin's family stated that his vision was very bad, and the fact that his glasses were broken and left behind was a very bad sign, and there's no way he'd be able to make his way around without seeing. Management at the bar told the family that Kevin had entered the bar 4 times the night he went missing. There's an Arby's down the road from the bar that had given the family 2 videos. They show Kevin walking by the restaurant alone, one around 1:40 in the morning, the other around 2:45 in the morning. The Brass Rail has given their surveillance video to detectives, but after 2 long years with no word, the family has become less hopeful. Many people believe he had broken his glasses and without his vision simply stumbled into the river and drowned. But if this were the case, the body would have been found during the multiple searches of the river, or at the very least, the body would have been washed up somewhere by now. In 2002, Michaela Lawrence, who was 12 at the time, and her entire family received news that her father had been in a fatal car accident. His body was barely recognizable from the wreck. The family, of course, opted for a closed casket funeral. A few weeks after the funeral, things started appearing in the mailbox of the Lawrence household, small packages with Michaela's name written on them. The packages would come once every few weeks. The first package was a small knick-knack type item. It was a decorative model glow-up Big Ben clock statue. It was a familiar piece that Michaela's mother recognized from the house somewhere. A few weeks later, another package came. This package contained an old antique stopwatch from the 50s. It didn't work anymore, but once again it looked familiar to Michaela's mother. None of the packages said who they were from or where they came from. A few more weeks later, on Michaela's 13th birthday, a card in an envelope ended up in the mailbox, and written on it was Michaela's name again. The card was a happy birthday card, but once again the mother recognized this card and the handwriting was familiar. It was the handwriting of her thought-to-be-deceased husband, but it was a card that the couple had given to their daughter years ago, and it was signed Love Mom and Dad. This confirmed her suspicions that the items that had been arriving in the mail were possessions from the house, those of her husband's. She tried to check the safe in the bedroom closet to see if anything was missing, but mysteriously the safe combination no longer seemed to work no matter how many times she tried. She tried going to the police about the packages at her house, but police couldn't do anything except advise to install some kind of security system. To this day, it's not known who sent the packages or how whoever sent them got a hold of them. Frauke Liebs disappeared on June 20th, 2006 from the town Paderborn in Germany. Her body was found almost 4 months later, on October 4th, 2006. The circumstances of her disappearance are mysterious, especially since she's believed to have made contact with her friends between her disappearance and her death. 2006 was the year of the Football World Cup in Germany. Frauke met with some friends at the Old Triangle Irish pub in downtown Paderborn to watch some of the games. Her mom dropped her off at the pub around 9 p.m. During the Sweden-England match, she exchanged text messages with an acquaintance until the battery of her cell phone ran out. She then borrowed the battery of her friend, but the friend said that she returned the battery before leaving. At about 11 p.m., Frauke left the bar. It's assumed that she walked home because she was said to only have about €5 on her at that point. Her flat was about 1 mile away from the pub. Nobody knows which path she took because nobody saw her after she left the pub. Her flatmate Chris claimed that she never arrived in the flat. At 12:49 a.m., her roommate received a text from Frauke, which stated that she'd be back late. She did not appear at work the following day, and after she was not in the apartment, Frauke's mother reported her missing. Over the next few days, Frauke contacted her roommate 5 times over cell phone. The calls were usually short and during the evening hours and did not contain a lot of information about her situation. In the first calls, she hinted that she would come back soon, but answered further questions evasively or mysteriously. The last phone call was received on the evening of June 27th, while Frauke's sister was present. Frauke got asked by her sister if she was held against her will, and she supposedly said yes, but then immediately corrected herself by saying no in a louder tone. After that, the contact of Frauke was lost. According to police, during these phone calls, Frauke's cell phone was in various industrial zones of Paderborn. The police also assumed that the calls were placed from within a car that was driven to those areas. The case was never solved. Jack Wheeler held many important positions throughout his lifetime. He was a chairman for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, a senior planner for Amtrak, an official of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and more. His value to his community made it much worse when Jack disappeared on December 28, 2010, after exiting an Amtrak near Wilmington, Delaware. He was later seen on December 30th at 10th and Orange Street in Wilmington. On December 31st, his body was discovered by a landfill worker as it fell onto a trash heap in the Cherry Island landfill. His death was later ruled a homicide. His death was ruled to be due to assault and blunt force trauma. It was determined that all of the stops the garbage truck had made that day involved large commercial disposal bins in Newark, a few miles from Jack's home. Prior to Jack's death, he was cited several times. On December 29th, he was sighted at the Newcastle County Courthouse parking garage. He was disoriented and wearing only one shoe. He tried to gain access to the garage on foot, claiming that he wanted to warm up before paying the parking fee. He told the attendant that his briefcase had been stolen, and he kept claiming that he wasn't intoxicated, but the attendant didn't believe him. It was later determined that his car was in a different garage. This was the last CCTV footage taken of him. Later that day, Jack asked a pharmacist in Newcastle for a ride to Wilmington. He reportedly looked upset at the time. The pharmacist offered to call him a cab. He then left the store. On December 30th, he was seen wandering around various office buildings. Several people asked if he needed help, but he refused any assistance. This case has still never been solved. Lastly, we have the disappearance of Brian Schaefer. In 2006, Ohio State student Brian Schaefer went into a bar and never came out. He was out with 2 friends one night and they went to a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. This bar had a front main entrance and a back entrance for staff and entertainment, both of which had cameras pointed at them. Around 10 p.m. that night, Brian called his girlfriend to tell her that he loved her. Soon after, Brian is seen on camera entering the bar, and then later seen stepping out of the bar to talk to 2 girls before going back inside. Minutes before the bar closed and they were preparing to leave, Brian told his friends he was going to talk to the band. Brian walked away out of sight and his friends waited for him, but he was never seen again. This was not a large bar, and the band does not remember talking to him. On top of it, the cameras never caught him exiting the bar. No one knows what happened to Brian after he walked away from his friends, or how he left the bar, or if he ever did for that matter. An FBI agent who was specialized in facial recognition spent a long time analyzing the security footage of the bar and watched every person who came in and out of the venue. He never identified Brian leaving, but years later, after he had stopped working on the case, he was at an Ohio State football game and saw someone across the crowd that he couldn't help but think looked very much like Brian. In fact, he bore such a resemblance to Brian that the agent had to go and talk to him. It turned out it was Brian's brother, proving just how good the agent's facial recognition abilities were. Brian's girlfriend called his cell phone every day for weeks, and it always went straight to voicemail until one night when it actually rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. This was unexplainable. The truly weirdest part about this whole thing is that the last footage of Brian was him re-entering the bar. No footage was ever found of him leaving the bar, which has led to theories that he never did leave. To this day, no one knows where he is. For anyone living in a house, odds are your house has an attic in it. Perhaps the place in your house you spend the least amount of time in. But do you ever hear sounds coming from up there? Sounds that almost make you wonder if something's up there. Of course, it'll usually be dismissed as house settling noises, because who would ever imagine that someone or something would actually be up in your attic, or God forbid on your roof, right? Well, these videos may make you want to install cameras. Jerome and Ashley Kennedy, a Pittsburgh couple, along with their 10-month-old baby, were living comfortably, unbeknownst to what was going on above their heads in their own home. The row house next door that was being renovated was owned by 73-year-old Robert Havrilla, who's described by the couple as very reclusive and known to keep to himself. Jerome was in bed one night when he heard noises above him in the attic, the kinds of noises that weren't just house noises. He knew somebody was up there. Then he noticed a light shining through a pipe, as if it were searching for a place to look through. So Jerome installed a surveillance camera in his attic, and a day later, caught on tape was many people's worst nightmare. His neighbor Robert in his attic, carrying a power drill, looking into the bedroom. His neighbor had made a removable wall to gain access to their attic. It wasn't just the attic though. Jerome also found perfectly round holes in the common wall between the 2 row houses. The shapes indicate that Robert the neighbor was drilling holes through the wall. Cops were called, and Robert was charged with stalking and trespassing, which he pled not guilty to. Robert's attorney made a statement that his client had no bad intentions. He claims he was in the attic for maintenance reasons connected to his renovations, not to peep on anyone or do anything malicious. Anybody with half a brain would know this is BS. The many holes drilled in the common wall and through the ceiling in the attic were without a doubt meant to spy on his neighbors. Strangely enough, it appears Robert was aware of the camera that Jerome had placed, as he looks right at it in this frame, so why he continued to do what he did is unknown. This anonymously submitted video to a channel called Handle Bandle starts with a young guy explaining how the dry boxed food that he and his girlfriend had left in the garage was mysteriously torn open and scattered across the floor.
Door open in the front, or the back door open, but when we were still moving our food in, we left a lot of our box food here in the garage, and when we came out, I think it was a couple days ago, I think it was a Thursday in the morning, the boxed food, the dry food that we had, was all torn open and scattered across the garage floor. Since then we sweeped it out and cleaned it up and everything, but something got in here and tore a big hole in the side of some of those boxes. But anyway, with this new camera, hopefully I can catch something on video. Maybe even put it up on YouTube, we'll see.
Obviously, it could have been any number of wild animals. So in an effort to catch the animal in action the next time it happens, to hopefully help put an end to it, the guy starts to record anytime he hears noises outside. So the following night, the The guy and his girlfriend hear some sounds on the roof while watching TV, so he looks out his window with his camera's light on in an effort to see if he can find the source of the sounds.
So we were just laying here watching The Office by the window up here, and we're on the second floor. And I mean, we hear noises out here pretty often, but you can see how high up we are. We hear noises out here, but nothing like what we just heard, so I think it might be worth looking into. I gotta get a flashlight. Can't see anything. I can't really describe exactly what it sounded like, but almost like some kind of a screech.
When the window doesn't provide a good view of what it could be, he decides to go outside for a better view, and this is what he sees.
Alright, let's see. The fuck is that? What in the fuck? Wait a minute. Hey!
It's half a head of what looks to be either some kind of creature or perhaps somebody wearing a mask. He goes back inside to gain access to the roof through his window to get a closer look. As he climbs up, he hears a snap, then looks to see the head again, still staring at him, causing him to possibly fall off the roof.
Nothing. Where the hell did it go?
No other information is known of this video. Was it some kind of creature? Some people in the comments were saying it could be an owl. Others think it was a person in a mask with malintent, possibly trying to break into the house. And some believe this was footage of a rake. Imagine being home alone at night as a teenager in a big empty house, and imagine that you start hearing noises from up in the attic. That's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Stephen Braun. While playing video games in the living room, Stephen heard thumping sounds from up in the attic. He called his dad, who was at work, and his dad sounded concerned and told him to go upstairs and check on the hot water heater, which is actually in their attic, a very uncommon place to find a water heater. Stephen's dad was worried that something was wrong with the water heater and that the sounds he was hearing were coming from it. So Stephen obliged and proceeded to go up into the attic, but not without recording. As Stephen checked the water heater and saw that it was completely fine, he then appeared to be leaving the attic, and that's when he heard a sound that caught his attention. As Stephen heard something come from inside a large, long box, he took a closer look at it and saw someone's eye peeking out one of the holes. Understandably, the 17-year-old was probably in shock and unable to do anything besides stop recording and run out of the attic. He says he locked himself in his room to call his dad, and his dad simply told him to hang up and call 911, and that's what he did. As Stephen was in his room, he heard the footsteps of someone leaving the attic and then running down the stairs of the house and out the front door. As has clearly happened way too many times before, by the time police showed up, it was way too late to catch the intruder. Oddly enough, nothing was stolen from the attic or the rest of the house, but it's unknown for how long exactly someone was up in the attic, or what they were doing up there. In this video you're about to see, a young couple who just recently moved into their new home started hearing noises from up above in the attic, so the man decides to go up there with a light and camera and check it out. The man looks around for several minutes but doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. As the wife is clearly very distressed and scared, the man maintains a calm, reassuring demeanor about the situation. As the man descends back down the ladder, the woman keeps recording and inadvertently catches something disturbing on video. What appears to be the wrinkled, gray face of an old man peering down at the couple for a very brief moment with an eerie expression. It quickly disappears back into the darkness above, going undetected by the couple. Some people believe that it may have been a homeless elderly man who was taking refuge in the couple's attic. However, given the small size of the attic, it would be very unlikely for the man not to have spotted a squatter up there. In the early hours of the morning on July 14, 2011, Josue Silva started hearing noises coming from his roof that he had been hearing the night before as well. This footage is over 10 years old now, and the person who recorded this didn't have much money to afford a better camera, and high-quality cameras weren't as easily available back then. Josue swears that the footage you're about to see is legitimate.
I've been hearing some noises on my roof tonight. Hear that? Hear that? Yesterday I heard the same thing, but I didn't want to come out. The camera wasn't charged. I can hear something up there. Hear that? Hear that? Oh my God. There, gotta climb on them. These are the shingles. Oh my God!
After seeing this rake-like creature, Josue falls from the roof from shock. He grabbed his rifle and returned to his roof, but the creature was no longer there. The creature seems to be bald with a large round head, but no facial features can be seen.
With everyone playing Pokemon Go, the game that actually forces you to get outside and walk around to find Pokemon in pretty much the world's biggest scavenger hunt, the app is creating a lot of laughs, whether they be from pictures of Pokemon in some pretty funny locations or videos of angry player reactions. However, with so many people suddenly exploring places they never would have otherwise, some are finding things they weren't supposed to find, or perhaps getting into situations they don't want to be in. Number 1. A story just about everybody's heard about by now is 19-year-old Shayla Wiggins from Wyoming finding a dead body. Shayla was told to find a Pokemon in a natural water source, but instead found a man's corpse. She was walking towards a bridge along the shore when she saw something in the water, and after taking a second look, she realized it was a body. Shayla is currently living in a trailer park for the summer with her mother, and in said trailer park, Shayla hopped a fence to get to the Pokemon shown on her map. The body was found in the Big Wind River, however there didn't appear to be any foul play involved and was ruled accidental, likely a drowning. The sheriff's department is still currently looking into it, but as of right now, the actual story behind the death remains unknown. Shayla, of course, did not catch the Pokemon. Number 2. Another player of the game shared his experience on Reddit. The 32-year-old man explained how he found himself hunting for Pokemon for the first time at 4 in the morning walking home from work after working the night shift, and later encountered about 5 sketchy-looking men, from his own words, on his late-night stroll. The man told Reddit of the little park that he must pass on his way home every night. The park had 2 Pokestops and a gym, so he decided to walk through the park this one time just to see exactly what the stops were for and what they did. Somewhere through the park, however, the man ran into a group of 5 younger guys, 3 black, 2 white. They all looked as though they were in the middle of a drug deal. One of the guys called him over, to which he just ignored them. They started to follow him, and before he could even decide to run away or not, the sound of 2 police cars quickly pulling up on the road alongside the park froze everyone in their spots. The group was reported by an anonymous resident for a potential drug deal, which actually turned out to be the case. The man, though questioned, was let go shortly after. Number 3. To the Pokemon Company's dismay, many players, or trainers as they refer to them, have been victims of robbery. In fact, different YouTubers have actually posted video footage of themselves getting robbed while playing the game. For example, YouTuber Aiden's Life.
And that's when I found this.
Yo. Yo, what's up?
Can you put your shit in this bag real quick for me?
What?
No, like straight up, we're gonna have a problem.
Whoa, what the fuck?
Put it in the bag.
Are you serious?
Straight up.
Get away? Yeah.
Seeing something like this happen to someone so unsuspecting is scary, and something like this has apparently been happening every day. One of the bigger cases so far was the story of a group of armed robbers apparently targeting victims using the game, who had done so successfully up to 8 times. The group of 4 teenagers were apprehended by police in O'Fallon, Missouri on Sunday after allegedly robbing a 33-year-old man. Most of you know the app contains Pokestops, which are randomly placed on notable locations in towns where players can earn points, Pokeballs, and make purchases. The player has to actually walk to that location to earn the points, which are available to all players. The game also features a lore module, which attracts Pokemon to a specific Pokestop. This invites other players to come to the location and collect Pokemon as well. This is exactly how these 4 teenagers lured unsuspecting players, mostly kids, to this specific location where they robbed them. One of the victims shared his experience, explaining he was simply walking to a Pokestop in the night when 3 guys came out from behind a parked van with a handgun demanding money. 2 of the robbers were 18 years old, one 17, and another 16. The 16-year-old is the only robber not being charged as an adult. Number 4. More than 1 dead body has already been found by Pokemon Go players, not even 2 weeks after release. 3 women playing the game found a dead body on Thursday the 14th near a creek bed in a San Diego park. The 3 women were walking on a trail while hunting for Pokemon at about 3 p.m. in Marion Bear Memorial Park when they stumbled into the body of a man who had been dead for quite some time. One of the women had apparently picked up on a very pungent and foul odor, and that's when they noticed the body laying in a patch of bushes near the bed.
I froze, stopped in my tracks, turned away from the body, and I had looked at my friend Amanda in the face. I looked my sister in the face, and I said, I think I just found a dead body. I looked down and I saw the legs, the bones of a dead body with no feet, no ankles, no shoes, nothing. It had looked like he'd been chewed.
Police believe foul play is a possibility, but his death will be further investigated. But that's not even it with the dead bodies. You won't believe it, but yet another Pokemon Go player has stumbled into a dead body. This man's body was recovered the same past Thursday afternoon from a small stream behind the New Hampshire Holocaust Memorial in Nashua after it was spotted by someone playing the game. The game led the player to a rather obscure spot where he found the body. As of right now, the police don't believe that foul play was involved. The police are, however, becoming more and more grateful for the discoveries that the app is leading to. In fact, some police forces are already using the app to lure fugitives to certain locations. Now, I can't necessarily verify if this last one is 100% true or not, but this one comes from a Redditor named Esty Skalisk, who made a post which has since been deleted, sharing something really scary that happened to him while playing Pokemon Go. The Redditor stated that he's 13 years old and that a really creepy couple moved in across the street from him. A couple who could always be heard arguing within a certain radius from their house. The man would always sit on his stoop and watch the kid playing Pokemon Go around the block. One late night, close to midnight, he was playing the game doing his usual laps around the block, when he noticed one of the Pokestops on the block, which happened to be a church, had a lure enabled on it. When he stepped in front of the church, he could see the man from across the street hiding behind one of the church pillars. He simply kept walking, pretending like he didn't notice, and got home safely. This was posted only a couple days ago and has had no updates since. This whole story can very easily be true, as the app can in a sense be a predator's dream come true. A lot of players are on the younger side, and certain adults may familiarize themselves with the app in order to lure children into quieter areas. So if you play the game, take the loading screen a little seriously, because believe it or not, there has not been a single day since the game's release without news websites reporting armed robberies or even dead body discoveries linked to the game. But hey, you gotta catch them all, right?
Has anyone ever had sleep paralysis before? I tell you, it's one of the strangest, most fascinating, yet horrifying things that you could experience. It's the feeling of being unable to move upon awakening. Your senses and awareness are intact, but you still feel as though you're in this half-asleep, half-awake state. I'd heard stories of this long before it happened to me. I've only experienced it once. I was in college. I was going through an incredibly tough time in my life. I was insanely stressed during finals week. I wasn't getting much sleep. It must have been the night before my last final. I went to bed late because I stayed up all night studying for bio. I don't remember at what point I decided to finally call it. I just remember it all becoming a blur, then blackness. Next thing I remember, I was in my room, in my bed, but there was this weird haziness in my awareness. Like I was awake, but I felt weaker. And when I tried to move, I couldn't. I could only move my eyes to look around the dark room. At one point, when I guess I was looking to one side of the room, I looked back to the center, and there was this woman standing dead center in the room, facing the bed. She was wearing this black dress and holding some long object. I wanted to call out, "Mom?" but my paralysis prevented it. I couldn't say anything. The woman came closer to me until she knelt down and touched my forehead, and I could feel it. She got eye to eye with me, and I could see my mother's face. I tried to say "Mom" again, desperately, but I was stuck in my own body. She stood back up and walked to the doorway before disappearing into the house. I lay there unable to move maybe another 10 to 20 seconds before my vision suddenly became more clear, and I was able to think more clearly as well. I was able to sit up. I jumped out of the bed screaming "Mom" over and over. I ran to the bedroom hallway yelling her name. A door opened down the hall and someone came to hug me, but it wasn't my mom. It was my dad, telling me he misses her too. My mom died 3 weeks before this happened. You know what I love about dreams? How vague and how bizarre they can be. You feel like you're in this separate world where things can just make no sense. Now what about when that unearthliness transcends into the quote-unquote real world? You'll see what I mean in a minute. I was in REM sleep having this bizarre nightmare about being followed by some weird creature in the middle of the woods. The dream became fuzzy though, and I kind of woke up from it. I say kind of, because while I was out of the dream and back in my bed, I couldn't move a muscle in my body. I started hearing this faint, weird noise. It was this indescribable, robotic, yet alive type sound. It started light and soft, but it repeated every 3 seconds. I noticed it was getting slightly louder every time. I felt like the sound was getting closer. It got so unbearably loud in my head, I just wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Then my eyes locked onto the closet door, specifically the crack in the closet door, which I never leave open ever. There was this distorted face of a man looking between the crack, with this unhumanly large open-mouthed smile, and every time I heard the noise, it seemed as if the closet and the face were getting closer, until the closet door slammed shut, and everything went silent. I regained control of my body shortly after that, and the first thing I did, even though I was 24 years old, was run to my parents' room to get my dad to check the closet with me. There was nothing in the closet though, or the rest of my room. My dad seemed pretty confident that what I just experienced was sleep paralysis, and that he had experienced it once as well. Didn't make me feel any less disturbed about what I just went through. Many years ago, I had a sleep paralysis experience. I knew there was a thing in my closet, something really evil, but I also knew I was dreaming and I should face my fear. I tried not to look directly at the closet door, but if I moved my eyes, my head would turn away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't look directly at it. Then I woke up in a cold sweat. At first I felt really relieved that it was over, but very shortly I realized it wasn't a dream, and there was really something in the closet. I was laying on my back and couldn't move, and I didn't really hear it, but I could kind of feel the sickening laughter wash over me in waves, emanating from the closet. All of a sudden the thing throws a human head at me and it lands on my chest face up. It was this girl I knew in high school. Up to this point I was kind of holding it together, terrified but not panicked. Well, I lose it now. I can't even scream, all I could do is make these grunting sounds and moaning noises. I'm wriggling and straining, trying to rock from side to side to get it off me, but I can't move. This seemed to last maybe another minute or two, and then I really woke up. It was so traumatic that for weeks I would be scared when I woke up that I wasn't actually awake and something horrible could happen at any second. It still makes my skin crawl when I think about that laugh. The thing is, I never heard of sleep paralysis or night terrors at that point in my life. I thought I was losing my mind. I've suffered sleep paralysis a total of 3 times in my life. The first 2 times, it just consisted of me waking up not being able to move my body. The third time was much different though. I had woken up very early morning, probably like between 5 and 6 a.m., when the sun was just starting to come up. There was light in the room, but barely any. I tried to move, but I had that unfortunately familiar feeling of paralysis, helplessness. My eyes fixated on the wall. There was nothing I could do. Then suddenly, I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs of my bedroom. It was my brother, followed by my sister, dad, and mom. They were all sobbing hysterically, and they all seemed to be at least a foot taller. It was unnerving. The 4 of them approached my bed, then stopped at the bedside, towering over me, all 4 of them crying. I couldn't move. I wanted to cry for help or just yell at them to stop because they were scaring me. Their heights, they looked like they were near to hitting the ceiling. Then, just as quickly as they entered, all 4 of them turned and walked back down the stairs. I could move again, and so I ran down the stairs to follow them, but they weren't in the outside area. I went to each of their rooms one at a time. All 4 of them were fast asleep. My heart was racing because the most surreal, unnerving thing just happened to me. I had to lean on the wall to gather my thoughts for a second, breathing heavily. Falling back asleep was futile the rest of the night. I lay awake until the sun was fully up. A few days later, I was struck by a speeding car when crossing the road with friends and ended up with 3 broken bones and a fractured thigh bone. I was hospitalized for a week, and at one point, all 4 of my family members stood next to my hospital bed, looking down at me, my mom being emotional and crying. It was almost the same image from my sleep paralysis. I'm not superstitious at all, but if I were, I would 100% believe that dream was some kind of sign, or some kind of prediction of the future. In fact, I just got chills writing that last sentence, thinking about it. There was this one time I was out late drinking with friends. It was some point in the summer of 2016. We were kind of just walking around town and then around the neighborhood when one of my friends spotted someone hiding in a bush. He pointed and said, "Look," and we all walked a little closer to get a better look. We could see what he was talking about, but just barely. It was bizarre, like someone hiding in this bush in front of this house. When we got too close, apparently, this weird, off-putting sound started coming from the bush. So we all screamed and laughed and ran away. We screamed because it was scary, but laughed because at the same time it was bizarrely funny. And there were a lot of us, so... Anyway, we walked back to our houses respectively, assuming whoever was in that bush was just messing with people. I fell asleep pretty easily that night since I was drunk, but next thing I remember was waking up to the near pitch blackness of my room. I couldn't look at the clock to see what time it was because I literally couldn't move. I was in a sleep paralysis state. I looked around the room with my eyes only and started to hear a familiar noise, the noise we heard coming from that bush. Then I looked straight in front of me, at the foot of my bed, and what I saw was pure nightmare fuel. It was what appeared to be this floating, grotesque, horrific head of a demonic ghost-like thing. As it got closer to me, I realized it wasn't floating. There was a body, but its body blended in with the blackness of the room. Its mouth hung open, and it just kept making the familiar noise from the bush. It got mere inches from my face before it suddenly just faded away, and I was able to let out a scream and move my body. I sat in my bed panting and heart racing. I flicked on the lamp and checked around my bed, but that demonic thing was gone. What I just experienced seemed so real, like I was awake for it. It wasn't a dream. I told my parents about it the next day, and they agreed with me that it was sleep paralysis, though they had never heard of anyone seeing freaky shit like that before.
Ever since I can remember, we've always had one of those old vintage Parker Brother Ouija boards sitting in our closet collecting dust. When I was a kid, I always wondered what it was. From the box, it seemed like a horrible board game, until one day I found out what a Ouija board really is, and immediately dug it out of the closet. I insisted on my brother trying it out with me, and eventually got him to play along. We put our hands on the planchette, and I began asking the typical cliché questions like, "Is there anybody there?" and "Can you answer me?" Other than my brother jokingly moving the planchette around to imitate an answer from some kind of entity, there was no real response. After getting bored, we put the game back in the box. I did a little research that night to find out how to make Ouija boards work. Many people said online that the most ideal environment when using a Ouija board is in a dark room only lit by candles. So when my parents weren't home, I managed to gather like 6 or 7 candles and convinced my brother to try it one more time. I lit the candles and set them around the table in the dining room with all the lights out. We tried one more time. I asked again if there was anybody there. The planchette began to move. I told my brother to stop moving it, but he swore he wasn't. I told him to move his hand away, and he did. It kept moving. My brother thought I was messing with him, but I didn't pay attention. The planchette landed on the word yes. I was only 9, so I was legitimately shitting myself. My older brother had to take over. He asked the question, "Are you a good spirit?" There was a 5-second pause before my brother's hand moved along with the planchette to the word no. We both looked at each other, and at this point I ran to my room and shut the door behind me, but he continued on with the so-called game. I heard his muffled voice come from down in the dining room, when all of a sudden I heard him screaming at the top of his lungs. I ran back downstairs to see what was wrong. He was holding up his shirt, revealing a small open wound that almost looked like a claw mark. He told me to set the fireplace immediately, and I obeyed. He threw the thing in the fireplace and told me to never speak of what happened to anybody. We have never used a Ouija board since. I got a call from my cousin who said that he, his brother, his dad, and his best friend were using a Ouija board in their basement. Prior to starting, they took a large porcelain doll out of the room because it was creepy, and placed it in the adjacent room face down on a pile of towels. My cousin took a short break because the board was just spouting nonsense and he had to go to the bathroom. His dad and brother and friends started asking the board questions without him. One of the questions was, who is in the other room? It just started spouting random numbers, and when my cousin came back into the room, his brother said that it wasn't working, that they were going to put it away, and he showed him the answer to the last question he asked, and he said, "Dude, that's my social security number." Then they started to talk to whatever started spewing answers out. It told my cousin he would die in the Air Force. At this point, they tell the entity they're communicating with to prove itself. It then spelled out the word doll, and they immediately got a bad feeling. They opened the door to check on the porcelain doll they had laid in the other room, and when they opened the door, the doll was standing up right in front of the door, staring at them. Everyone freaked out and ran out of the house. His best friend burned the Ouija board, and I think he temporarily went nuts for a few months. My cousin, for some reason, then joined the Air Force, and is on a base in Europe now. I had some of my friends over one night, so we tried out the Ouija board we found in someone's garbage. It had the board and the glass piece that you hold onto. The four of us held onto the piece and asked stupid questions, just messing around. At all times, one of us were moving around the glass piece just to try and fool the others. When one of my friends went to the bathroom and the other got bored, it was just me and one of my other friends still holding onto it. I asked the board when I will die, and the piece started slowly moving to the letter T. I laughed, looking at my friend, thinking it was him, but he just told me that he thought it was me. The piece then moved to the letter O, and then M, and then back to O, and then R, and then I realized that it was spelling out the word tomorrow. My friend let go of it, and it stopped moving, so I was convinced that it was him, but he swore left and right it wasn't him. But here's where it gets horrifying. The next day, while walking my dog to the preserve, my dog's collar suddenly snaps and he was free from the leash. He darted into the road and I immediately chased after him, only to hear the horn of an oncoming car blaring and getting louder. I dove as fast as I could out of the way, just barely grazing the car with my foot as it passed. But it didn't end there. The same day, while sitting under the ceiling fan in the kitchen on full blast, I got up to get something out of the fridge, and behind me, I heard a loud crashing sound as all the glass on the table was shattered and everything fell onto the floor. The fan had fallen off the ceiling, and I was inches away from being decapitated. I really don't know if I find it to be a coincidence that the day after the Ouija board said I would die the next day, that I had two near-death experiences. All I know is I'm never touching a Ouija board again. I have never really told people about this. We had a huge closet full of old board games, and one of them happened to be a Ouija board. I always wanted to try it out, but my family was always home, and I felt weird trying it in front of them. There was this one weekend that my parents were going to the city, and my brother was going on a Boy Scout campout, so I would have the whole house to myself for a weekend. It might have been pathetic that I was more excited to try out a Ouija board than to party with friends while the house was empty. The weather was terrible, windy and rainy, but I felt that a rainy night would actually make it more ritualistic. Around midnight, I set up the board in my dining room and dimmed the lights. I asked a bunch of questions that generated no answers, so I eventually put the board away and went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to hear a creaking noise downstairs by the front door. At first I thought nothing of it, but then I heard it again, and it was closer this time, closer to the stairs. I sat up now. At this point I was getting concerned. Another creaking sound, this time from one of the stairs. I was sure somebody was in my house. This was before cell phones were mainstream, so calling the police wasn't even an option. The creaking sounds were getting closer until they were right outside my door, and then they just stopped. It felt like hours while I laid there clutching my covers, waiting for something to happen. A huge strike of lightning momentarily lit up my bedroom, and I swore I could see some kind of black limb-type objects wrapped around the open door. I tried to hold my breath to be as quiet as possible, but what happened next was the worst part. My door suddenly slammed shut, and I couldn't help but let out a shriek. By now, I was completely under my covers, shaking and crying and wanting to scream. All the windows in the house were closed, so there was no draft. I just knew something was going to happen. But nothing happened. I sat under my covers for hours, thinking somebody or something was in the room with me. When the sun started to rise, I finally snuck a peek out of my covers. My room was just as empty as before. I somehow found the courage to leave my bedroom and search for any signs of a break-in. Everything looked normal, though. No broken windows or unlocked doors. I then spotted the Ouija board on the table again. I have always been kind of superstitious, so I immediately linked the happenings to the Ouija board. I chucked the damn thing in the outside trash can and brought it out front to the curb. Since then, nothing has happened, and I didn't tell anybody about it. You wouldn't understand unless you were in that kind of situation. Then you would agree that nobody would believe a word you say. Nobody really knows except for the people that read my story online. I know for a fact that those events were linked to the Ouija board. I can tell you from personal experience that trying a Ouija board is a huge mistake. It was the summer of 2013. My friend had a vintage Ouija board that was allegedly worth a decent amount of money. My friend agreed to trade it with me for a video game that I never played, so I happily made the trade. I tried using it alone, but it proved to be just a scam. I didn't really expect it to work. I mainly got it just for the money to be made off of it. I threw the stupid thing on the floor of my living room and forgot about it. Everything was going normal until the next morning. I woke up and found that the 2 plants I had sitting on my coffee table had been knocked over, and the Ouija board was sitting on the table. I didn't remember putting it there, nor did I understand how the plants could have fallen over. Wind was definitely not an answer. I wondered if it was possible that I had sleepwalked, or maybe I was half awake and walked down to get a glass of water and bumped into them or something. I moved everything back in place, but the carpet already had dirt stains on it. I brought the Ouija board box up to my room and tossed it on the floor. Things got bad that night. While laying awake in the dark, I was disturbed by the sound of a muffled click. I looked up, not sure what it was, and then I saw through the cracks of my closet door that my closet light was on. I had no idea how it could have turned on, but I got up and opened the closet door anyway. There was nobody in there, but that hadn't even crossed my mind. I turned the light off and jumped back into bed. Probably 10 minutes later, I heard the same clicking sound. Naturally, I looked to the closet and felt my heart sink a little. The closet light was on again. A mix of confusion and fear started building up inside of me. I once again turned off the light and cautiously got back in my bed. I found myself waiting for the closet light to click on again. But what happened instead was much worse. Instead of the closet light turning on, the whole room suddenly filled with light as I heard the main light switch flick on. I had seen enough and was out the door within seconds. I quickly pieced things together and chucked that old Ouija board in the closest dumpster. Nothing weird ever happened after that.
Lockdown, lockdown. This is an emergency alert.
Before being taken on as a full-time teacher at a high school a little outside of Austin, Texas, I was a substitute. I would sub in for a multitude of classes, with my main subject area being math classes. Being a sub, I would most days have a lot more off periods, of course, since I would work more on an as-needed basis. This was on a day that started like any other. I had 4 classes I would be subbing for that day. They were all the math classes that a specific teacher would teach, including geometry and algebra. I would usually enjoy subbing for science classes, as the teachers would usually just have me show the class an educational documentary and then hand out a question sheet, which would be handed in at the end of the class to be graded. With math though, you'd actually have to teach the material as a sub. I arrived to school and picked up the keys from the front office to the 2 classrooms I'd be subbing in that day. Both classes were in the math hallway, which was downstairs to the far left of the school. The periods I was teaching that day were something like 2, 3, 7, and 9. I had already taught the first 2 classes, so I had about an hour and a half before the 7th period class I'd be teaching. During most of this time, I stayed in the classroom of the last class I just subbed for since it was empty for the next 2 periods. I was doing a mix of work-related and non-work-related things on my laptop. Period 6 there would be another class here, so I'd migrate to the teacher's lounge by the back of the school. After the second bell rang and period 6 began, I was walking the empty halls to the teacher's lounge. I'd been in the lounge multiple times, and honestly, it would usually be subs sitting in there, if anyone. The teacher's lounge is pretty much in the back corner of the school, by a separate back entrance that's only unlocked from the outside by teachers' ID cards. I set my belongings down on a table in the empty teacher's lounge, and this was when I heard knocks at the back exit door. I went out to the hall and to the doors, where I saw a clean-cut looking man with gray short hair and a button-down shirt tucked into khakis, with a black jacket over all of it. He looked like a teacher. He saw me through the glass and smiled and asked me to open the door. I asked if he were a teacher here. He said, "Yes, my name's Mr. Abrams. I don't have my ID on me today." I opened the door for him, and he thanked me and quickly walked past me. I noticed that now he had his hand in his right pocket. He had some serious movement in his step. He seemed to know where he was going. Actually, he was going in the direction of the math hallway. I suddenly felt like I may have made a mistake letting him in without ID. I rushed to my laptop and pulled up the staff directory, which was accessible to all employees of the school. I looked up Mr. Abrams. There was not a single teacher at any of the schools, elementary to high school, with the last name Abrams. I had no choice but to call the front office and let them know that I think someone pretending to be a teacher had entered the building. This was taken seriously as the school issued a lockdown immediately, sending every classroom an automatic distress call to lock all doors and turn off all lights immediately. I heard a commotion from out in the math hallway. I walked out into the hall, a little closer, and I could hear bangs or kicks on a door, and a man screaming at the top of his lungs, "Maria, open up, and I know you're in there." Maria was the first name of the teacher I was subbing for that day, and I couldn't tell for sure, but I believe the door he was kicking on was one of the classrooms I subbed in that day. Police had surrounded the school in literally minutes, and had entered from multiple entrances and detained the man. I didn't witness it happen. It was down in the intersecting hallway, and I wasn't allowed past the police. The teacher I subbed for, who I changed the name for her privacy, had called out of work that week, originally alleging she was very sick. The man who came to the school banging on the door was apparently her ex-husband, and as far as rumor has it, Maria did something horrible to him. Not much of a rumor, because clearly that would be the case if he came to the school with a gun. Everyone's guess is he came to kill her and then himself. No one knew where Maria went to hide from her ex, or what the full story was, but she didn't return to work for months. I pray to God all the time thanking him that no one was hurt or killed, because I was the one to let him in, and that would have forever sat on my conscience. This story is told in the perspective of a college-aged female. I attend university in Massachusetts. I currently live off campus in my final year here, but this took place when I was a freshman living in the dorms. Freshmen are on the first floor of every building on campus. This was the winter semester. It was a freezing cold day. I just finished up my last class around 5 p.m. Our professor let us out really early. It was already dark out as I was walking back to my dorm. On my walk back, I got a text from the university. The text started in all capitals saying, "Attention all faculty and staff, get to a safe building immediately," as a suspicious man was walking around campus approaching women with crude, threatening comments and telling them he had a gun. The text mentioned that university police were aware of the issue and were on full alert, looking to find the man. I picked up the pace in my step to get back to my dorm building. I started looking behind me every few seconds, and suddenly noticed someone walking not that far behind me. It was a black man in a huge winter coat. I couldn't gauge his age from this distance. But also, he could have just been a student. At that point, I was being paranoid. Plus, the text didn't specify the person's race. I rushed to my building, and when I got there, I let myself in. To get into any dorm buildings on campus, you need to use your student ID cards. I entered the building. The first door shut, then I opened the second door. That's when a loud bang at the first door made me jump. It was that man from behind me before. He was asking if I could open the door. I was about to ignore him, but then he said, "Please, I'm cold." I turned to look at him, and he had this pleading kind of expression on his face. I asked, "Do you live here? What's your room number?" He said yes, he's on the 3rd floor, but he ignored my asking his room number twice. I said, "Sorry, I can't let you in." This is when he started saying vulgar, horrible shit that I don't want to repeat. He started licking the glass and commenting about what he's gonna do to me as soon as he gets into the building. In disgust, I ran to my room and slammed the door behind me. I turned on the lights as it was pitch black inside and my roommate wasn't back yet. I texted my dorm group chat saying I think the creepy man the school sent a warning about was at the front door of the dorm building. Don't come anywhere near. Everyone replied the same thing. OMG, call university police. That's what I did. I got the number off the website and called them. Told them right away the creepy man with a gun was at our dorm building. When they asked if he was still there, naturally I walked to the window to look outside. I screamed at the top of my lungs for 3 seconds when I saw the man on the other side of the glass, smiling, shaking his head, doing this disgusting motion with his tongue. I pleaded with the officer on the line to send the police there now. The man on the other side of the glass took off running, and he disappeared into the darkness as soon as he was beyond the light of the light posts. I still cried for the police to hurry, and as soon as one of them got to my dorm room, I let him in and described what the man looked like. He told me to stay in my room and don't leave again for the night. He advised I tell all my friends in the building to do the same. An additional text was sent out to all residents of my building. The hunt for that man went all night apparently. They never found him. The things he said to me were beyond disturbing. I didn't see a gun on him, but honestly anything could have been in his massive coat pockets. The campus had extra police on duty the rest of the week. When I was in 2nd grade, each day of the week we'd have a different extracurricular activity at some point in the day. I think it went Mondays was art class, Tuesdays was music class, Wednesday was library day, and so on. By 2nd grade, kids were allowed to walk to the bathroom unattended as long as they got permission and took the special hall pass item chosen by the teacher of the class. For the art class, it was this big green plastic crayon that was meant as the bathroom pass. I remember this memory almost vividly, which makes it all the more disturbing when I think about it. Honestly, I was kind of a weird kid when I was in elementary school. I did have some social issues that I don't think ever got diagnosed, but I would sometimes just do weird things. Case in point, we were never supposed to just take the bathroom pass and leave the classroom without asking first. But during art class, as our teacher was going around the class helping the students out with our little creations, I got up and took the plastic crayon and walked out the classroom door to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was all the way down the hall. I go inside, and as a kid, I was the type to pee sitting down. So I went to the stall and sat on the toilet seat. This was when I heard the loudspeaker outside the bathroom, that the school was going into lockdown. My heart started to race. I was outside of the classroom during a lockdown. I was terrified. I don't remember if I finished peeing or not, but I know I got right off the toilet seat and went outside back into the hall. I was scared I was going to get in trouble. I saw all of the classroom doors were shut with their blinds down and lights off already. I was too late. I saw a man walking down the hallway. I assumed it was a teacher, even though he wasn't dressed like one. I had the wits of a 2nd grader, so I said, "Excuse me, I'm locked out of my classroom." I remember vividly, he said back, "Oh, that's alright, come with me, I know where to go." He grabbed my hand and we started walking in what seemed to be the direction of the back exit. That's when I heard a familiar woman's voice keep screaming Troy, my name, from behind us. It was my art teacher, Miss Green. She screamed at the man to get off me and grabbed me by the arm and tugged at me back to the art classroom. Once inside, she locked the door and scolded me quietly. I remember seeing the worry in her eyes. She might have even been crying. The lockdown continued for another half hour at least. The whole time I was confused, scared, and most of all embarrassed by all the stares my classmates were giving me. The principal came on the loudspeaker eventually and said the lockdown was over. When my art teacher got on the phone with I assumed the front office, I think whatever she said was what prompted the faculty to end the school day early. I'm so grateful for Miss Green. She really put herself in danger and saved me from something horrible, whether it be from kidnapping to any amount of emotional trauma. This happened to me when I was a junior in high school, around April or May of 2019. I live on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but for privacy reasons, I'll leave out the school name. I played the double bass in our school wind ensemble, and every morning we had rehearsal in the band hall. We were about halfway through rehearsal when I heard a knock on the band hall door, which opened to the outside. I don't think anyone else heard the knock because we were in the middle of performing a song, and I was standing with my double bass on the perimeter of the ensemble, along with the percussionists, so I was closer to the door. Before anyone could say anything or react, one of the percussionists who I knew just blindly went over to the door and opened it for the person outside. We had been repeatedly told by the band directors to never open that door for anyone on the outside unless it was a student, and even the students had to show their student ID badges through the window before being let in. But we still have to open that door a lot for other students as it locks on its own. So he probably just opened it without thinking and didn't look through the window. As soon as he opened the door, the person forcefully came in and walked to within 15 to 20 feet from where I was standing. It was a middle-aged Latino man, about 5'6", wearing a gray hoodie and cargo shorts. I immediately noticed that the guy had both of his hands in his hoodie with what appeared to be a heavy object. The band director saw him first and immediately stopped conducting, and the rest of the band turned their heads around to see what was going on. The band director asked with a nervous but forceful tone, "Can I help you?" The man replied in broken English, "Yes, I came to check out my daughter." The band director asserted, "This is not where you check out students, you shouldn't be here." The man then asked where he should go to check out his daughter, and to my surprise, the band director directed him to go out the band hall double doors and make a right down the school's main hallway to the front office. The man thanked the director and quickly walked out of the band hall into the school. During this whole conversation, I had my double bass turned in the man's direction and stood behind it so that it would maybe somewhat shield me from any bullets. After the man had disappeared down the hallway, the entire orchestra was speechless for a minute or so, processing what just happened. The director immediately called the school security, and within a minute or so, the school was on lockdown. The director turned off all the lights in the band hall, and we all crammed inside whatever tuba lockers we could find. A whole 5 minutes passed until 2 armed security guards came running full speed through the band hall in the direction that the man had gone. Another 10 or so minutes passed and the lockdown was over. The school never came out with an official statement of the event, nor could I even find any local news articles about it. I suppose the school was trying to keep the whole thing a secret, for such a stupid breach of security would certainly damage its reputation. But I later heard from multiple other students that the man had just committed an armed robbery somewhere near the school and was fleeing on foot from the police when he decided to take refuge in the school, pretending to pick up his daughter. I also heard that he was found with a gun on him, which explains the heavy object I noticed in his hoodie pocket. The fact that I was standing literally 15 or so feet from an armed intruder inside of a school for a whole 2 minutes still terrifies me to this day. Although I know the band director was probably trying to keep his cool so as not to piss the guy off and cause him to shoot all of us or something, I still think he made a huge mistake by directing the man to go further into the school instead of telling him to go back outside and enter the school through the front door like every other parent or visitor has to. Had that man had worse intentions, that situation could have ended tragically. I'm glad I'm not in high school anymore, because now I know firsthand how easily such things could happen at the hands of a careless mistake. This experience was short and to the point. I was a very young child in Catholic private school. I was in the 4th grade. Our school would routinely practice lockdown drills. I think once every couple of weeks we'd have one. All of us in the class were always excited for them. For some reason as kids we just found it to be fun. It's all a joke when you're that young. Half the kids don't even realize what you're practicing for, and the other half who do don't ever expect a real lockdown to happen. One day it did though. Over the intercom came a voice from the front office saying, "We're going into lockdown, this is not a drill." I remember some kids still laughed at the announcement, as if it were cool to hear that we're going into lockdown. No one could have prepared for what came next. As our teacher seemed concerned and rushed to shut the door and the lights and yelled at us to get in the corner, I think that's when everyone realized this wasn't just a regular lockdown drill. Something serious was going on. We all huddled in the corner of the room. Each door had a narrow glass window which could be looked through. Suddenly the silence was broken by crazed screaming from the halls. It was one lone male's voice. It was just incoherent screaming. The man was chanting something. The screams got closer, and I remember how scared we all started to get. The screams got closer until they were right outside our classroom door. and then bangs on the door made a bunch of us scream and cry. The man on the other side of the door screamed, "Your God is dead. Jesus didn't die for your sins. You're all gonna burn." Our teacher tried his best to calm us down as the screams intensified, and the man started to yell, "I hear you in there. I see you. Open up the door." The man screamed words I didn't understand at the time, but I believe looking back, he was screaming Islamic phrases and shaming our religion. I was too young to put it all together immediately. The bangs on our door stopped, and the screams continued further down the hall away from the door, but they could still be heard. The crazed man continued through the halls. The man's screams were overpowered eventually by the yells of other men. There was a huge commotion in the halls during what I presume to be the moment he was taken down by police or security. We had to stay in the lockdown position for a long time even after this. After a while, the lockdown was over, and the school day was cut short. Parents were called to pick up their children. Luckily, my mom didn't work, so she was able to come pick me up right away. It was a bit of a scarring experience. We were all so young that we didn't even understand the gravity and freakishness of the situation. I'm just glad no one got hurt.
The first video I did on this topic was relatively successful, and when I asked if you guys wanted a part 2, a lot of you did. For some reason I haven't gotten around to making a part 2 until now, so here it is. No intro needed, here are 5 more creepy and weird YouTube channels from the weirdest side of YouTube. Number 5. Marble Hornets. Fully known as Clear Lake's 44 Marble Hornets, is a channel featuring a series of strange and creepy videos that upon first glance seem like complete randomness. However, the videos on this channel actually formulate a story based on a character based off of Slender Man, who is referred to as the Operator. Early video entries on the channel consisted of tapes taken by a guy named Alex who obsessively recorded himself in order to capture the Operator stalking him. Alex starts out as a main protagonist, eventually turning into an antagonist, believed to be working with the Operator.
Alex? Alex?
Eventually, the entries turn to videos taken by a guy named Jay, recording his efforts to unravel the mystery surrounding the Operator. Over time, Jay follows leads to old buildings, former homes, and even defunct and abandoned locations, and begins finding this being stalking his old friend may be deeper and far more dangerous than he ever thought, and there's a very good chance that Jay may now be hunted for getting too involved. There are a lot of videos with dialogue and story on the channel, but there are also a lot that don't seem to make any sense, and there are many videos with footage of the Operator, as well as other creepy antagonists. There's a similar channel titled To The Ark, which commonly responds to the videos created by Marble Hornets. Thus, it's most likely Marble Hornets' second channel. The videos in To The Ark's channel are much darker, more cryptic, and overall more disturbing. Some videos on this channel even feature a figure that may be the Operator. Like other similar weird channels on YouTube, To The Ark's videos contain cryptic messages that the viewers try to figure out and explain in the comments sections, but all they are theories. There are even other channels on YouTube that try to explain Marble Hornets and To The Ark, but once again, they can only be theories. If you want to try to follow the stories of these channels or find the connection between the two, you're free to click the links in the description. Number 4. Jack Torrance. No, not Jack Torrance from The Shining. The YouTube channel titled Jack Torrance features a large amount of disturbing and mysterious found footage videos that the uploader, Jack Torrance, allegedly found at an estate sale, which is basically a larger garage sale. Jack says he found these movies in 10 rather large boxes at the sale for $5 a box. It was being held about 15 miles west of Austin, Texas. There were some old records, which he also bought, some rusted tools, tons of paint cans, various other bits of old useless junk, and then these boxes. The people running the estate sale didn't seem to know that they were there and priced them for Jack on the spot. The films vary in formats ranging from old 35mm stock reels to Betamax. Many of the films are damaged beyond repair, but Jack and his friends are trying their best to repair and clean them up. He says, as we dig through the boxes, catalog and digitalize more videos and audio, we will post more. As of today, the last video was uploaded 7 months ago, but that doesn't mean that there won't be any more, as there have been upload gaps as long as 2 years in the past. Number 3. David Firth. David Firth, like Syriac, is a very talented animator who chooses to use his talent to create flat-out disturbing animations.
Billy Masters has been quite a naughty boy. Don't you understand this? I said, don't you understand this?
You may know him for his most famous animations, Salad Fingers, which is an extremely dark, creep-out and gross-out series that most likely takes place after nuclear war.
Hello.
A lot of David Firth's animations have the power to make your skin crawl, not because they're necessarily scary, but because they can be so disturbing that you actually start to feel uncomfortable. His videos aren't just limited to drawn animations. There are some that you may have expected to find on a channel like Neat instead. However, not all of David's videos are disturbing, just a select few that really stand out, earning his channel a spot on this list. Number 2. My Dark Journal. This channel features a large amount of just weird and creepy videos. There's no description to the channel, and there really is no real description to give. Each video is something completely different and weird in its own sense, though there may be some kind of story being told through the videos. The subscribers of the channel tend to claim that everything on the channel is real and not just a series like Marble Hornets. The channel has its fair share of creepy videos, as well as just flat-out weird or pointless ones too. Like a lot of other weird YouTube channels, My Dark Journal has many cryptic messages in the videos, as well as a recurring image of a white mask. There are recurring characters who appear in the videos who are supposedly growing more insane as the videos go on, though there hasn't been a new one in 7 months. The channel has been said to have some kind of connection to the channel Meat, but that remains only a theory. Number 1. Nana825763. Truly a unique and strange YouTube channel, Nana is best known for his video username 666, which is a video of alleged footage of what would happen if you would try to reach username 666's channel back in the year 2008. If you don't know what username 666 is, that's a whole nother topic. There are a lot of dark themes and jump scares on this channel, with some videos starting out seemingly innocent and kid-friendly, then suddenly turning dark and disturbing. A lot of the later content on the channel consists of an ant and worm video diary with eerily happy music slapped in, and more often than not, an unnecessary jump scare is also slapped in. This channel has a weird mix of videos, with weird footage, trippy animations, and lots of ant and other bug videos. This channel may be a one-stop shop for some people looking to get their creep on. And that's it for this list. With all the weird YouTube channels out there, I would gladly turn this into a mini-series on the channel, but of course I would need to find more channels, so if you know of any, leave them in the comments.
When I was 21 years old, I worked the maintenance and custodial position at the nearby daycare down the block. My job entailed disposing of trash, moving and setting up furniture for special events, performing preventative maintenance, keeping supplies organized, maintaining and cleaning the facility, caring for equipment, and overall maintaining a safe environment, which included reporting suspicious activity that may lead to child abuse or mistreatment. Some days I'd even be the one both opening and closing the facility. It was a pretty demanding job since it was just me and one older guy who was more or less my boss. Most of the time I'd be the one to lock up the place, as he would go home earlier. The daycare building is on the grounds of a Catholic school and church, though I'm pretty sure the daycare was open to anybody, regardless of religion. The older worker, who I'll just refer to as Bob, was leaving early this one day. It must have been a Friday because he always left early on Fridays. He told me the things I needed to get done before cleaning up. Start with the usual clean up the classrooms, and also pack the rest of the Thanksgiving decorations from the classrooms back into the crates, bring them down to the basement, and then start bringing the Christmas crates upstairs. These crates contain decorations that would be used all over the building, from the lobby to the hallways to the classrooms. The childcare staff would be the ones to do the actual decorating, but it was my job to clean up all of it and bring the crates up and downstairs. Since it was now after Thanksgiving, it was time for Christmas decorations to be brought up. All the kids and staff were gone by this point. It was dark out between 6 and 7 o'clock. I was the only one left in the building, so I locked all the doors while I continued my work. I went down to the basement, which was used mostly for storage. Since it was cold out and we were past outdoor play season, all the outdoor toys that were usually in the courtyard play area were downstairs in the basement. This included but wasn't limited to plastic slides and those toy cars that kids would move themselves in with their feet. The basement consisted of a hallway which passed the boiler room and the hot water heaters, and at the end of the hallway was the storage room. This room always had a creepy vibe to it, mostly because of the lighting, or lack thereof. There was no direct overhead lighting down there. It was just two sketchy dim lights in the corners, and then the small light from the hallway. The basement ceiling also wasn't high. I had to slightly crouch to avoid hitting my head in certain spots. It was like a hybrid of a basement and a crawl space. But then again, I'm 6'3", so to shorter people this wasn't an issue. The basement had a bunch of small windows that would make it decently bright down there during the daytime, but obviously at this point it was dark. So I would use a flashlight. I brought the Thanksgiving containers down one by one, putting them near to the front of the basement just because I was lazy and wanted to go home and likely start the weekend. I was lugging one of the Christmas containers up the stairs and through the hallway when I heard a kid's voice and then laughing. It was very muffled, but I definitely knew what I heard. I stopped pushing the container and started looking around the place. I checked every classroom, then the indoor playroom, then the art room, then the bathrooms, every room I could think of. There were no kids in there. I kept hearing that muffled voice every once in a while though. The one place I didn't check was the basement. I walked back to the basement door and looked down the stairs, waiting. I heard a noise come from down there. The realization that there was a kid down there dawned on me, and so I ran down the stairs yelling, "Who's down there?" thinking one of the kids snuck down there. I got to the bottom and ran the basement hallway to the storage room. I saw one of the toy cars moving for like a second before coming to a halt. It was 100% as if it had just been pushed. I stood in place and looked around the room. I didn't see any kids that could have just pushed that car. I said, "Anyone down here?" multiple times. It was dead silent. The silence was actually deafening. I started actually looking inside the boxes and containers, thinking a kid could be hiding in one of them. But halfway through, I started realizing there was no way a kid could close any of these containers or boxes on top of themselves. At this moment, I felt like I was alone, but that I also wasn't. I can't explain it. And then, right behind me, I heard something plastic drop to the floor. There was no draft whatsoever down in that basement. I didn't even turn to see what it was. I just fled to the upstairs without looking back. I stopped at the top of the stairs again, and when I heard what I could only describe as a child's whisper down there, I slammed the door shut. I didn't know what else to do except call Bob, and in short, he said if I think there's a kid down there that I need to call the police. The scary thing is, I didn't think there was a kid down there, but I still called 911. I just couldn't leave without confirming. And I was right that there were no kids down there, because with the help of a couple police officers, when we looked down there, there was nothing but a bunch of boxes and containers full of supplies and decorations. I also couldn't find anything on the floor that could have made that plastic sound dropping on the floor. Given the fact that there was nowhere else to hide down there, and no one reported their kids missing, the cops could do nothing except leave. I could tell the cops felt like I wasted their time, but I was too disturbed to be embarrassed of the police call. I quit right before Christmas, before I ever had to go back down to that basement again. This happened not too long ago. I live alone in my apartment. I'd like to get it out of the way that I don't take any medication, nor am I diagnosed with anything that would impair my awareness or cause me to hallucinate. This night was a one-time incident that I can't explain, and I really hope it stays a one-time incident. I had a long day at work. I work as a construction worker in the city, and I go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week on top of it. So depending on the projects we're working on at work, when I get home, I'm ready to collapse on a couch. After work and the gym one night, I stopped for food on the way home because there was no way on earth I was about to cook. I was shot. I got home and plopped the Chipotle I just bought on the ottoman in my living room, and I just laid out on the couch as I ate. This was later in the week, so I was already tiring out. I demolished the Chipotle, and I definitely could have eaten more, but I was honestly so tired that I actually fell asleep on the couch while watching TV. I woke up a few hours later, realizing it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was so comfortable on the couch under the blanket, honestly, that I didn't want to get up, but I realized I left my contacts in, so I went to the bathroom to take them out, and at that point, I went to my bedroom to just go to sleep in my actual bed. Walking to my room, I heard my name called from the living room. All I could think was, what the actual fuck? It was a female's voice. I turned back around and went into the living room. I flicked on the light, but the room was too blurry. I said, "Who was that? Mom?" No answer. I had to go get my glasses from my room if I wanted to see. I made my way to my nightstand and grabbed my glasses, and then went back out to the living room. I was the only breathing soul in here. My apartment isn't huge, it's just the kitchen and living room, which are one space, then my bedroom and a bathroom. Not many places to look, and not many places to hide. But there also shouldn't have been anyone in my apartment. I called my mom just to confirm she wasn't here, and I apparently woke her up with my phone call, so that answered that. I chalked it up to a brain fart moment, because clearly no one was in here, and so I went to bed. It wasn't as easy to fall asleep this time, because now all I was thinking about was how I just heard a voice say my name. It was when I was finally seemingly starting to fall asleep that I heard a female voice say my name again, from inside the bedroom. I flipped over on my back and looked across the room. All I could see was this big, tall, human-shaped mass a few feet in front of my bed. I could see the long hair of a woman, and I could barely see what I must have imagined to be distorted facial features. I let out a harrowing scream as I fumbled for the light switch or my glasses. I knocked over the lamp as I finally found the switch to turn it on, and now there was nothing at the end of my bed. I put on my glasses and searched every nook and cranny of the room, under the bed, the closets, and the dresser. Then I checked the rest of the apartment. I can say matter-of-factly that there was no one but me in this apartment. I felt like I was losing my mind. The only way I managed to go to sleep that night in that apartment was convincing myself I had hallucinated these things because of my lack of sleep or overworking myself. When I tell people about this, I downplay it, saying, yeah, I hallucinated this one time. I don't go into detail about how real it all was, because then some people get doubtful or think I was on drugs. It was without a doubt the scariest, most surreal moment of my life, hallucination or not. I'm 27 years old, living with my brother James in a house we share. Never had anything severely strange or abnormal happen to me in my life, but there was this one week that I experienced this strange series of events. It started on what I thought would be a normal night like any other. I was in the kitchen washing the dishes before getting ready for bed. Suddenly, a plastic cup came crashing to the floor, and the sound of it made me jump and spin around from the sink. I saw the blue plastic cup bounce a few times, then fall dead on the floor. This was one of the cups that sits up top the cabinet. I knew it had to have been sitting upright though. I had no idea what kind of force could have knocked it off the cabinet. It made no logical sense. I picked it up and put it back on the cabinet. That wasn't the last strange event that night though. While in bed with the blinds shut, there was suddenly a strange, very faint glow in my room. It came through the blinds. I flipped over onto my side and tried to peek under the crack at the bottom of the blinds, but I couldn't see anything. Honestly, as weird as it was, I was so comfortable in bed and was too lazy to go lift the blinds. I dismissed the light as something like a street light having a new bulb or something. I know, a little ridiculous, but at the time I had no reason to suspect anything paranormal. The next day I was home alone when James was at work. It was a dark, stormy day, and the house was constantly rumbling from the thunder, so when I heard a cup fall from the kitchen, I associated it with the thunder. I went to the kitchen to pick it up, and realized it was the same blue plastic cup I'd carefully put back on the cabinet yesterday. There was no way thunder could have knocked it down from where it was. I put it on the counter and stood there, confused and a bit shaken, looking around the kitchen, not knowing what to think. As I was standing in the kitchen, I heard a creak in the floor above me. The room above me was actually my bedroom. I went to the stairs and called up for James, but I instantly remembered he wasn't home. Maybe it was the thunder shaking the whole house. But still, I had to check my room just for peace of mind. I went up the stairs to my room and turned on the lights, given that all the rooms in the house were dark due to the weather. My room is square-shaped with two big closets. The room was clear, as were the closets. So I shut the light and went back downstairs. That night, when James got home, I had a discussion with him about the strange events that had been taking place. He said he hadn't been aware of any of it. Still, nothing that happened up until that point was extremely unusual. For the rest of the night, things were normal. I fell asleep with ease. I awoke at some off hour in the night. It was still dark. I checked my phone. It was 2 in the morning. I rolled back on my side and shut my eyes. When I heard the distinct sound of a finger tapping on a window, I could feel my heart in my throat. I didn't know why someone would be knocking at my window, but I didn't want to see who could be out there. But for some reason, it took me that long to realize I was on the 2nd floor of the house. Therefore, nobody could be on the outside of my window. I pushed the sheets off my body and flipped to face the window. There was no one standing there on the inside though. So I lifted the blind, and there was no one outside either. Still, I knew that I heard what I heard, and I knew I hadn't been imagining or dreaming it. I ran to my brother's room and started freaking out. I don't know whether he believed me or not. Quite frankly, I don't think I'd believe me if I hadn't experienced it. I slept in the living room that night, and it's been 3 weeks now without any paranormal incidents. I never believed in the supernatural until this happened. I once took a road trip from New Hampshire to Florida. I had to stop at a hotel to sleep overnight when I was about halfway there. It was some old, somewhat dilapidated hotel that rested off the highway on a quiet road. There were like 2 cars in the parking lot, so there were definitely not a lot of guests. The lady at the front desk was very robotic and seemed bored with her job. She seemed to fit the atmosphere of the hotel perfectly. The lobby was full of tacky chairs and tables you'd expect to find put out on the curb. The wallpapers were all dated and equally tacky. Didn't matter though, I wasn't staying there for the luxury, just for the night and for the convenience. It was late when I checked in, so when I got in the room, all I did was take out my toothbrush and brush my teeth before jumping into the hotel bed. I turned out the lamp next to the bed and tried to go to sleep, not looking forward to the long day of driving I had ahead of me the next day. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I looked at the bedside clock to be sure that it was almost midnight. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. Apparently the peephole didn't work though, because I couldn't see out into the hallway through it. All I saw was black. I looked down at the crack under the door, but didn't see any outlines of feet blocking the light, so I opened the door just a little bit to peek into the hallway. When I didn't see anyone standing in front of the door, I opened it fully and then peeked down both sides of the hallway. It was clear, so I had to suddenly question if someone in this relatively vacant hotel was pranking me. I shut the door, locked it with the bolt this time, and went to lay back down in the bed. But then it happened again, a knock at the door. This time I jumped out of the bed, ran to the door, and checked the peephole again. Shockingly, all I saw was the empty hallway outside, but it hit me. This time I could actually see through the peephole. I unbolted the door and opened it. No one. I looked down both sides of the hallway again, and there was no one. This was where I drew the line. I grabbed the key to the room and went to the lady at the front desk. I told her someone kept knocking on my door, and politely asked her to check the cameras to see who it could be. She said they didn't have cameras in the hallways. Her reaction also wasn't what I was hoping for. She seemed very calm and disconcerted with what I told her. She said in a calm voice there was only one other guest in the whole building. Then she just stared blankly at me. I'm not sure how she thought her response properly acknowledged my concern or what she expected me to say, but I could tell she wouldn't be of any help with the matter, so I left her and went back to my room. I locked the door with a bolt again. This time I put on my headphones and put on one of those 10-hour sleep relaxation videos on YouTube. This would not only help me get to sleep, but block out any possible future sounds from whoever was deciding to mess with me. And it worked. For a while at least. Eventually I flipped from my side to my back, just looked around the room. My head froze when I was staring at the corner. I sat up to try to get a closer look at what I thought I was seeing. I swear it looked like a giant humanoid figure, like a 10-foot tall human, standing right in the corner, head to the ceiling. When I put that image together in my head, I felt a sudden rush of horror in my body. I jumped across the bed to flick on the lamp, but when the room lit up, there was nothing in that corner of the room. I simply sat there with my heart beating probably 200 beats per minute. I gave myself a couple minutes to calm down before shutting the light back off and laying back down on my side. I still had the headphones in my ears playing the relaxation video. It helped calm me down a little bit. I didn't last even 2 minutes without sitting back up and examining the room again, however. And there it was in the corner, what looked to be a 10-foot tall humanoid figure. I crawled to the edge of the bed to get as close a look as I could before practically shitting myself. I saw what I was sure was a long arm at the side, moving. I dove to turn on the lamp again, and the corner was empty again. I didn't stick around that time. I packed up my few things in a matter of seconds and left the room. I gave the key to the woman and said I'm checking out early. She didn't even say a word as I stormed out that front door of the hotel. I continued driving until I found another hotel, where I fell fast asleep with no supernatural disturbances. As a kid, I had a bedroom on the first floor. Money was a little tight, and our mom was taking care of 4 kids. I was the youngest, so I had the little room. My room was next to the living room, a small square room with wood flooring. There were 2 big vents in the floor in this room in 2 opposite corners, and also 2 vents in the ceiling. My bed took up half the room. Like I said, it was a very small room. I'll keep it short and straight to the point. I was 13 years old doing my homework on my bed since I didn't have a desk in my room. when I heard a child's laughter. I went outside my room to look around the living room and kitchen for any of my siblings. Everyone seemed to be upstairs, though. Usually in these kinds of stories, you hear people say they just chalk these kinds of things up to their imagination. But that's stupid. I definitely heard that laughter. There's no way I imagined something so clear. I continued my homework, but with one ear perked up listening for any other suspicious sounds. Eventually enough time passed that I was able to move past it. In fact, it seems it was just about when I was able to get over it that I heard it again. A child's laughter. Or more so, giggling, I should say. This time it went on longer. It wasn't coming from outside my room. It was somewhere in the room. I figured one of my brothers were hiding from me. I followed the sound of the laughter, strangely to the corner of my room. Then I looked down at the vent on the floor. It was coming from inside the vent. I got down on my knees and pressed my ear up to the vent. There was no more giggling at this point, though. When there was a silence for a few seconds, I lifted my ear from the vent and then put my eyes up to the vent to get a peek inside. It took me a second to realize I was staring at a pair of eyes looking back up at me. I shrieked like a girl and screamed for my mom. She came storming into my room moments later, but of course the noises were gone, as were the eyes. My mom thought I was going crazy due to a lack of sleep, but I refused to sleep in that room, so she let me sleep in her room that night. That went on for a week, actually, before she put her foot down. I spent the next 4 years in that same bedroom before we moved, and nothing paranormal ever happened to me since that one particular night.
Number 5. It's been estimated that nationwide there are 600,000 ski-related injuries per year and an average of 54 deaths per year. The most common causes of death or injury while skiing are hitting a tree or falling off a cliff. 54% of these deaths occurred on beginner-friendly trails, while 31% were on expert trails. Surprisingly, the increase in the number of people who wear helmets hasn't resulted in fewer fatalities. Helmets are designed to protect riders at about 12 miles per hour, while a skier or a snowboarder who collides with a tree or another rider is typically going 25 to 40 miles per hour. The 3 videos you're about to see are of horrifying skiing accidents that can happen to anybody. Fortunately, all of the skiers in these videos survived.
Oh shit!
By some miracle, all of these men went home with only broken bones. Number 4. Sarah Jones was a camera woman who died at the age of 27 while on the set of Midnight Rider. She was struck by a passing train as the film crew desperately tried to remove the props from the tracks. There are 2 different videos capturing the moment, one from on board the train and one from the crew, capturing in higher quality the frantic moments just before impact as they try to pull the hospital bed off the tracks. This footage is definitely chilling, especially knowing how Sarah lost her life just seconds after the clip ends abruptly. As you can see in the video, the crew wasn't able to remove the hospital bed in time. When the train collided with the bed, it recoiled and struck Sarah, propelling her into the train, where she was struck and killed instantly. The filmmakers were attempting to shoot a dream sequence involving an actor playing Greg Allman, who was laying in the hospital bed placed on the train tracks. There were attempts to drop the scene from the movie, but director Randall Miller eventually proceeded with the now deadly filming. He was later tried and pleaded guilty to manslaughter, serving 2 years in prison. Number 3. There's an activity called zorbing, which involves a giant inflatable ball in which people strap themselves, then bounce down a ski slope or a hill, and presumably have a good time doing so. But imagine being stuck in said ball, tumbling down a hill, veering off the designated path, and rolling down the side of a mountain with absolutely no control. That's exactly what happened to 2 men in Russia in 2013 at the Dombai ski resort. The video you're about to see was filmed on a cell phone by a friend of the 2 men. It's truly horrifying to see the helplessness of the situation.
Держи его, блядь! Ох, блядь! О, нет! Как так-то? Да не укатится, нормально. Ох, блядь. Остановится, и все. Об камень, давай об камень! Пиздец. Kim var da içinde? Блять, а там что внизу? Ебать. А кто это, чем вообще? Я не знаю,
At one point, you can see somebody manage to get in front of the ball and momentarily stop it, but unfortunately, that didn't last long. The ball tumbled down the mountain for almost a mile, slamming into rocks as it picked up speed. When the 2 men were found inside the ball, they were rushed to the hospital. One of the men, Denis Burakov, aged 27, injured his spinal cord and died on the way to the hospital. The other man, Vladimir Sherbakov, aged 33, suffered a concussion and deep cuts to his arms and face. Number 2. 2 men were out for a workout running in the Machitawan trails in Alberta, Canada.
Pausing workout.
When they had to pause the workout after being interrupted by an unwanted guest. A black bear emerges from the woods and begins closely stalking the 2 men, likely waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The 2 men wisely huddle closely together to appear bigger, as you can hear them say many times throughout the video, which proves to be successful in keeping the bear at bay.
That's it. That's as far as you're going. Stop. Stop. Right now. Stop.
We can't.
Get together. Get us together. We'll look bigger together.
We can't, man. We can't.
Just stay together. Stay together.
We can't.
Stay together.
There's an alarming amount of people who believe this bear was just being playful, when in reality over 90% of black bear encounters are predatory. This was more than likely not an experienced bear, and it was testing them to figure out if they would be worth the energy and effort to attack. If anybody should ever encounter a bear, never take it lightly or assume the bear just wants to be friendly, as that's almost never the case. Different kinds of bears call for different kinds of actions to be taken. For example, standing still like a plank, or playing dead. Fortunately, the bear in this video eventually seemed to lose interest in the men, giving them enough time to make their escape.
Resuming workout.
Though it wasn't a good idea for them to start running away in such a close proximity to the bear. Had there not been 2 people in that encounter, that bear would have most likely attacked. Number 1. This is perhaps one of the most horrifying natural disaster videos you could find. Not only does it capture the horrifyingly destructive EF4 tornado, but it shows the horror that ensues for many people as their houses, cars, and whole towns are completely destroyed when they're trapped in the middle of tornadoes or other disasters. We can see at the start of the video it seems to be a very nice, wealthier area with nice looking houses in the background and a lot of green and open land. And in that same shot we see the tornado that's about to destroy it all. The man holding the camera then goes to comfort either his wife or daughter, and we see nothing but blackness, but listen as the tornado passes directly over the house, destroying everything outside.
Holy shit. Holy moly. Alright. Holy shit. Alright, I gotta go. I'm coming, honey. Shit, where you at, hon? God damn, it's bad. Alright, stay down, honey. Oh, shit, Josie. Uh-oh. We're gonna get some shit here, honey.
Is this gonna save us?
I hope so, buddy. Oh my God! Okay, honey. Holy shit! Stay in. Oh man! Oh! Shit!
Don't go out there.
No, not yet.
Don't.
Oh.
Stay here.
Oh my God, Josie.
You can feel the man's dread as he then has to go outside to see the damage.
Holy moly. Oh my God. Our house is freaking destroyed, Josie. Oh my God. I'm in shock. I can't believe this happened. Oh my God, Josie. The neighbors' houses are gone. Josie!
He then gets another shot outside from where he was at the beginning of the video and sees nothing but rubble for miles. This turned into this in only a matter of a minute. All those nice trees and houses you saw in the background are completely gone. It just goes to show you the true power of Mother Nature in a horrifying way, and that nature can always win.
The 5 most disturbing things that have happened in schools. So in honor of a new semester starting again, today we're going to look at some of the most disturbing things that have happened in schools around the world. Number 5. A recent Reddit post in the subreddit Creepy documented the horrifying tale of a teenager named Jack. Jack says he attended Westland High School in Oregon. He raised his hand one day to go to the bathroom during class, and on his way to the bathroom felt a strange presence in the hallway, feeling as if something were following him. As he was in the bathroom stall, he started to hear the sounds of nails lightly scraping against the stall door. He looked under the stall door, and there were no feet anywhere in sight. He seemed to be the only one in the bathroom. He says a crack in the ceiling from above him made him look up and see this. There was a hole in the ceiling with an expressionless head staring down at Jack. He describes his reactions as fumbling onto the stall door and becoming paralyzed in fear, gazing up at the ghostly face staring down at him. He says he somehow managed to take this picture of the face with his cell phone, which he already had out,
and after that ran straight to the janitor's office to show them. The original picture is in horrible quality. However, someone took it upon themselves to clean the picture up a bit, stabilizing it and removing some of the noise to it. It's not much better, but this is what it looks like now. To his credit, there had been reports of noises in the bathroom by other students. Some thought it was a ghost, some thought it was a homeless person hiding up there, and others just thought he was making it up. Number 4. The hallways of Pocatello High School are allegedly haunted. Unedited video surveillance captured on several occasions strange events, such as lights flickering on and off, cameras shutting off, and most disturbingly, a specter is seen slowly floating toward a doorway, stops, and then moves away. The ghostly figure is as tall as a person, but does not resemble anyone in particular. While the figure could be argued as something hanging in front of the camera, that does not explain the mysterious lights. Officials at the school said that this was only a highlight of what goes on at the school. Students and staff alike have reported strange sounds such as whispering or a piano being played on its own. Officials said teachers and janitors would complain about being left alone in the auditorium due to strange noises and a dark, looming shadow figure. To make this all more disturbing, this school has had a history as well, counting 6 deaths and it's burning down. Number 3. This is the disturbing video of a girl who was believed to be under possession by a demon. She was usually a well-behaved student, who on the day in question was acting completely normal, up until a point where she started screaming uncontrollably at seemingly nothing. She starts to become clearly paranoid of her surroundings, and begins to speak and act as if she is someone else. She remembers absolutely no one around her, including her peers and teachers. As she begins to scream and act crazier, she is held down, and a lot of the speaking you hear in the background is prayer for the girl. As you can see, the teachers try to help without any success. It's been reported that the girl was sent to the monastery where she was treated and had been recovered from an evil spirit. Number 2. A couple of Afghan teenagers decided to videotape a said-to-be haunted, abandoned school. They expressed their fear on several occasions throughout the video, but seemed to be more excited to finally be able to videotape this place, as they had been planning to do so for a long time. They don't see anything strange at all besides some odd drawings on the wall and abandoned school equipment. At a later point in the video, though, a strange ghost-like entity makes an appearance. Upon closer analysis, the figure appears to be missing a head. The teenagers claim they did not see anything while filming in the school. They only noticed the entity after watching the video on their computer when they went home. It's become a relatively well-known clip on YouTube by now, and remains one of the more interesting clips of the supposed paranormal. Number 1. According to another Reddit post, a 45-year-old janitor was working overnight at the Visual Art Institute in Massachusetts on a cold, snowy January night. He wasn't comfortable with it, as everybody in the institute was reporting hearing noises coming from inside the walls and in the vents. The janitor would scrub the bathrooms out and hear muffled noises coming from inside the walls. He moved on to the classrooms and studios and heard slight rumbling type noises coming from the vents. Later that night, the janitor went to the basement to fetch a drill from the supply closet when he heard a tapping noise. The The tapping noise was louder than any other sounds he had heard. He found out the sounds were coming from a vent. He undid the screws to the vents. He found a man hiding in the vents that jumped out, practically tackling him. The janitor bashed the man in the head unconscious. The man was escorted to the hospital, where he admitted to being homeless and that he had been spying on people in the art classes and in the bathrooms through tiny holes in the vents and walls. An 18-year-old boy named Liam was home alone for a whole week when his dad and stepmom went on their honeymoon. While playing video games in his brother's old bedroom, who had since moved out, he could hear a kind of scraping noise that seemed to be coming from outside. The strange thing, this room was on the second floor, so it seemed nothing but odd to hear something outside scraping against the walls. He tried to ignore it by turning the video game up louder, but the scraping sounds only became more apparent. He decided to finally look out the window, but it was too dark to really see anything. He left the window open a crack to better hear the noise if it persisted. Liam spun around to discover the window was now open and someone was crawling into the room through it. He was able to push the intruder back out the window before he could fully make it into the room, who then fell 2 stories down into the bushes below. He apparently wasn't too injured, as he was gone within minutes. During a rainy night in central Islip on Long Island, a teenager named Ian was home alone, so he invited his friend Carl over. His friend texted that he would be over in 2 minutes. Ian prepared the video games he planned on playing with Carl and heard the gate to the backyard close. Confused as to why Carl went out back, Ian went out to the backyard. His shed door was open with the light on. As he called out Carl's name walking to the shed, the light inside the shed turned off. Simultaneously, Ian received a text from Carl saying, "I'm here." Ian responded, "Are you in the shed?" He responded back, "I'm at the front door." As Ian looked up, the door to the shed pulled shut with force. Ian ran back into his house and let Carl in. When the police responded to Ian's call, they checked the shed, found the door was back open, and that nobody was inside. "45-year-old Chris was supposed to be working late for the night, so his family went out to eat dinner without him. However, he was unexpectedly able to come home early. As a result, he had the house to himself for a few hours. He went down to his man cave in the basement to watch TV. That was when he heard the backyard basement window flap open, and someone stuck their head inside, peering around the room. He hid behind the couch until the person shut the window. Chris ran upstairs with a baseball bat and shut off all the lights. He waited in the kitchen, which was by the back door. Somebody suddenly reached their arm through the pet door in an attempt to unlock the door. Chris swung the baseball bat as hard as he could at the person's arm, causing them to scream and flee. That same night, sirens roared down the street and stopped at a neighborhood house. It turned out one of Chris's neighbors 3 doors down had been murdered, and when his wife came home, she found the house was ransacked with missing valuables everywhere. And then she found her husband, dead on the kitchen floor with a stab wound in the back of his head. A young girl named Anne was home alone one snowy Friday night. Her parents were out to dinner, and her sister was out with friends. She was taking a nap on her bed. She awoke to the thump. She was sure it came from her closet door, so she got up and bravely opened it. There didn't seem to be anyone inside, so she closed the closet and spun around. There she saw the head under the bed, the head of a man looking at her with an expressionless stare. She fell to the floor screaming. That's when the closet doors behind her opened and someone grabbed her and pulled her in. The man from under the bed emerged and approached her as she was being held down. The two of them carried her downstairs where they put tape over her mouth and tied her arms together. One checked to make sure the coast was clear before carrying her outside, where they planned to put her in their car's trunk. However, about halfway to their car, a large group of teenagers came riding down on their bikes and witnessed it all. Some of them were screaming for help, while some of them got off their bikes and started to slowly approach the two men. They knew they wouldn't get away with it now, so they dropped in, jumped into their car, and sped away. She was completely awake and conscious throughout all of this. It's unknown why they didn't just tie her up while she was sleeping. The most realistic possibility is that they simply wanted to scare the girl. This may seem like a crazy, rare occurrence, and you may even call it fake. However, things like this happen all the time and are shown commonly on the news. Perhaps they're just the stories we forget about. "22-year-old Garber still lived with his parents. He was the youngest of 3, so his 2 siblings had already moved out and his parents were out 3 to 4 nights a week. This one particular stormy night, he was home alone in his room when he could swear he heard something hit his window. It wasn't insanely weird, as the weather was pretty bad and something may have just blown into his window. However, a second thud at the window sent his heart racing. He lifted his blind and could see somebody standing out there. Even through the damp windows and the pouring rain, he knew he did not recognize that person. He shut the blinds to send the message to go away. However, he wasn't even able to move away from the windowsill before something else was thrown at the window. Garber opened the blind, and this time even the window, and shouted, "What do you want?" The man down below called back, "Come outside, I want to show you something." Garber went downstairs to call the police. They asked him if he was sure that he didn't know the person and if they had caused any damage. The 911 operator asked Garber to call back if the person continued to harass him or showed signs of wanting to break in. Garber hung up the phone. He wanted to see a better view from down in the kitchen, so he opened the kitchen blinds. Garber called the police right back and informed them that the man was standing at his kitchen window and to send somebody right away. The next time he looked back at the kitchen window, the man was gone. That was the last time Garber ever saw that man. I hope you found this video interesting, scary, or just entertaining. If you'd like to hear more Home Alone stuff, I do have a video about 10 true Home Alone stories.
There's a YouTuber by the name of Dan Bell, who's known for exploring abandoned places on his own and getting it on video. The purpose of these videos is not to catch paranormal footage, but simply to explore these places. However, in this specific video of his, a number of unsettling events take place that would make most people run for the exit. This video was shot at an abandoned children's asylum, and you can tell the eerie vibes from the place from just outside. Dan's camera battery inexplicably explodes in his hands, which is only the start of the strange occurrences.
Shit! Fucking battery exploded.
Soon after, without even knowing it, Dan is being stalked by an unknown presence. In this shot, you can see what looks like the shadow of someone's arm making a motion as if they had just told someone to shush. In a follow-up shot in an adjacent room, if you look closely, you can notice something peering in through the doorknob hole to this door. Exactly 1 minute later in the video, what looks like a white figure can be seen peering at the camera as Dan turns. And when his hand moves away, you can see the figure is gone. This white figure might match the white figure that peered through the doorknob hole. And finally, when Dan finds himself in a room with blood on the floor, you can hear a voice in the next room over, saying what most closely resembles "Let's get him." Dan had a theory of his own as to what was following him around in there.
I think that a former patient has returned to this facility, to this house, and is living here in one of the rooms upstairs.
Others believe there may have been more than one person in there, and that they had some kind of white sheets over their heads to hide their identities, planning on robbing him or worse. Powlee's Island is a small town in South Carolina, which by the immediate looks of it is a very peaceful place. But there is a story that many of the locals swear by, known as the Gray Man. Many locals claim they have seen the Gray Man, and some go as far as to say that any time the Gray Man has been spotted, a hurricane has swept through the island shortly after. All sightings of the Gray Man have been on the coast. There are many pictures online which have allegedly caught the Gray Man, but this one video captured by a Coast Guard surveillance camera captures a strange gray apparition moving down the boardwalk, and this was captured during Hurricane Florence. YouTuber by the name of Time to Play TV decided to spend the night at an allegedly haunted hotel in Georgia, the Riverview Hotel.
As you know, this is where we went to, this place that the video you're about to see is a haunted hotel. It was made in like 1916 by 3 women who had it built, and then they ran it, and they obviously eventually have passed away. And then I guess the sightings started happening after they started passing away. People would see a woman in the hallway, stuff would move, stuff would happen, and people would say, hey, that's the girl I saw. The pictures on the wall is the woman I saw.
His plan was to set up a camcorder in the room while he slept and try to capture any paranormal footage. Unbeknownst to him until after his visit, a visitor had recently died in that exact room he stayed in. Before even setting up his camcorder, strange things already started to occur, like the fan turning on and off and the bathroom door shutting on its own.
My fan has shut off and turned back on. See that? Now the fan and the light are both plugged in behind the bed, and they're connected. So that shuts them both off. You hear the fan shut off? And the fan by itself is turned off, I want to say, maybe 2 times, 2 or 3 times. The bathroom door over there, it's closed. Now, I don't mean a little bit. I mean, it's fully closed. Now, the reason it's open now is because I thought maybe a breeze, maybe something. There's no windows open. I got nothing going on, and that thing right there is just closed all by itself. It's closing right now, guys. It just moved a little bit. I'm telling you, it just... See that? There's no one in here with me. Completely alone. No? There is no one here, guys. I'm using the front facing the camera, so it's kind of hard to see. But you can see. Watch. Watch. See, it's a watch. It doesn't close by itself.
Then night came, and upon checking the footage the next morning, he could see things were just as strange overnight. Not only the chair, but also the entire bed moves, he decides he's not going back to sleep. Whether this was an elaborate hoax or truly a haunted hotel room is up to you to decide. It's the story everyone's heard 100 times already. A house nestled in the Long Island town of Amityville, which will forever be linked to what is known as the Amityville horror phenomenon. On November 13th, 1974, the estate was the scene of a mass murder. Ronald J. DeFeo Jr., who was 23 at the time, shot and killed with a rifle his entire family while they were asleep, which included his parents and 4 siblings. 13 months later, the Lutz family purchased the 5-bedroom, 3.5-bathroom home at a drastically reduced price of $80,000. But they only lasted 28 days before leaving it due to strange phenomenon, including George Lutz, the father, waking up at 3 a.m. every morning, which was around the time Ron DeFeo carried out his murders, and the youngest daughter, Missy, beginning to speak to an imaginary young entity in the house. A camera investigation was conducted of the house, and out of all the pictures taken, one stood out the most. The boy in this picture is commonly thought to represent the youngest DeFeo family member, who was murdered in the house, and also the entity that Missy had been communicating with. This is another video uploaded by a YouTuber who decided to venture out alone to an allegedly haunted abandoned building. This time, a house in a rural part of Japan, seemingly in the middle of the woods. While scoping the perimeter of the house, the cameraman is suddenly startled by this.
音がやばい。何何何？何？手じゃない今。ねえ、ちょっと待って、手映んなかった今。ねえ。
A hand can be seen grabbing the corner of the house, causing the man to flee. Even after this, though, apparently the cameraman is still determined enough to enter the house to continue with the investigation, against anyone's better judgment.
何なんか聞こえる。うわ、ちょっと待って。なんか聞こえるんだけど。何？嘘。うわ、聞こえた。うわ、聞こえちゃった。どうしよう。うわ、ちょっと待って。
Shortly after entering the basement, this is what the camera catches.
裏側。ねえ。いや、マジでやばい。なんかいる。絶対いる。何？ The
cameraman was clearly being stalked by someone in this house. By who remains a mystery. Some reactions to the video even suggest that it may have been the ghost of someone who formerly lived there. Everything we don't want usually gets thrown into the garbage for the local sanitation workers, or as we like to call them, garbage men to pick up. Usually, whatever you have stuffed in trash cans or bags gets dumped into a truck without a second glance, which is why some people feel the garbage truck could be the best place to get rid of some of the skeletons in their closets. Maybe even literally. Garbage men all around the world, as expected, find horrific, disturbing things being dumped into their trucks every day. These are 5 short examples of this with downright creepy backstories. This experience was shared to me by a New York State sanitation worker named Ricky. Ricky had a set group of coworkers on his truck: the driver, Norm, and the other trash collector who would ride on the back of the truck along with Ricky, named Al. Al was always a rough and tough kind of guy. He had the long grayish beard, bald head, stocky build, tattoo-covered arms, and the deep trucker's voice. He was the kind of guy who you wouldn't want to get on their bad side. Long story short, Ricky and Norm were as close with Al as his aggressive and demeaning personality could allow. There really wasn't much fun between the three, and it was mostly a show-up, do-the-work kind of relationship. One particular day, Ricky noticed Al was acting really strange, quieter, noticeably unhappy. When he attempted to approach Al and get him to open up to be friendly, Al responded with a lot of hostility, saying things like, "Mind your own business, I'm not unhappy, focus on the job." Clearly something was going on in his personal life, and he wasn't the type to be open about things, so Ricky just left it alone. Now on the route they were assigned to, the truck passed both Norm and Al's house at some point. On this particular day, when they stopped at Al's house, he told Rick firmly to run down to the next house over and grab the plastic table that was sitting by the curb. Ricky said, "No, I'll just wait until we get over there." In response, Al yelled at him to just do it. Confused and a bit afraid, Ricky conformed and started walking over to the next house. As Ricky picked up the table and started heading back to the truck, after responding to Norm's confused hand motions behind the wheel, Ricky noticed Al hurriedly throwing a bag into the back of the truck. When Ricky threw the table into the truck, he saw the long black bag sitting over the rest of the waste, and imagined the worst. But knowing Al's aggressive and defensive nature, he kept quiet. By the end of the shift, when Al had left, Ricky stopped Norm and told him what happened. The two reported what happened to one of their superiors, and the waste that was dumped from the truck was thoroughly searched. Eventually, they found the black bag that Al had dumped into the truck, and the now squishy red contents that had been oozing from the bag. Robert Calvin was temporarily a garbage man for a city department in Los Angeles one summer because a guy quit. Originally, his job was only to consist of mowing grass and whatnot around town. However, he and his temporary team received a call from the mayor one day, requesting that they go pick up the remaining stuff in an evicted tenant's apartment. The collectors arrived and found that there were clothes everywhere, a bed, some other furniture, and a couch. The place was absolutely disgusting. Along with the clothes, garbage was scattered everywhere, the rugs were stained, there were even holes in the wooden living room floor. When going to help a few guys lift the bed and couch, Robert had noticed empty vials laying around the floor. He told his co-workers to be cautious as he knew there was a possibility of needles having been stuffed in the furniture. After taking a closer look, Robert and his co-workers realized that this guy had shoved dirty needles down his couch and bed in hopes of someone picking it up and getting stabbed. Tucked further beneath the couch cushion was a small crumpled up note, saying, "You're not getting off this easy." What was found in the trash can in the backyard was even more disturbing. Filled to the brim was a trash can full of worn-out children's dolls, and in most of the dolls' tiny plastic arms were tiny holes assumed to have come from the needles. It was safe for the workers to assume that the man who had been evicted from the house had his fair share of illegal drugs. A sanitation worker named Sarah shared one of her experiences as a garbage collector with the internet. Sarah explained that while it's not seen on cop shows, police enlist the help of garbage collectors to look for crime scene evidence and collected waste. Near Sarah's trash route is a known meth haven, and from time to time the cops would ask Sarah and her coworkers if they had found certain types of items in the trash, like certain kinds of containers or chemicals. Interestingly, she and her coworkers would also be asked to look for burglary-type objects such as weapons if there were to be a local robbery. On a more notable occasion, Sarah was asked to keep an eye out for cash registers in the trash because robbers could tend to steal entire registers, bring them home, and then toss them in the garbage when they empty them, assuming like everyone else that whatever ends up in the garbage is out of sight and out of mind of anyone. One more disturbing experience, however, was when Sarah and coworkers found a leg stuffed in a garbage bag in somebody's trash can. On that same day after the shift when police were notified, it was discovered that Sarah and her coworkers had picked up more than one body parts. In fact, the body parts had been dumped strategically around town in random houses' trash cans, and they needed to search all of the trash to find the whole body. A Reddit user named Georgie P, who happens to be a garbage man, who has a number of posts relating to sanitation work, shared his story in a Reddit post asking garbage men what was the most disturbing things they found in people's garbage. Georgie works in North Carolina, and he explained that despite what people may think, garbage men are nosy and do like to peek a bit through people's garbage bins before dumping them into the trucks. Well, one particular day when he did that at a corner house in Winterville, North Carolina, he found a white, half-sealed plastic bag, and through the opening up top was a sketchy-looking picture of a young girl. Georgie took the bag out, opened it, and found that there was at least a pound's worth of images of the same young girl, who appeared to be about 13 years old. He called his coworker over to check it out with him. Some images were school portraits, but most of the others were a lot creepier. Most of them seemed to have been taken without the girl's knowledge. Some appeared to have been taken through an upstairs window aimed to a house across the street, specifically zoomed into a room with the light on, and with the same young girl getting dressed in her bedroom. It seemed as they went through the pile, the images only got more and more disturbing. Georgie told his coworker to call the police as he continued flipping through the images. The creepiness levels peaked as high as they could go, however, when Georgie held up an image that was taken in a dark room. It became clear what it was very quickly. It was a picture of the little girl sleeping in her bed, taken by somebody standing right above her bed. The owner of the house was home, and he was arrested that same day and possibly charged with stalking of a child pornography since some of the images captured the young girl while she was nude, and breaking and entering. This last mention on this list is told in first-person point of view by a current sanitation worker named Hugo. I work as a garbage man in Manchester. I've been doing this for 11 years, so I've seen all of the weird shit that gets thrown out. Or at least I thought I did, before this. It was a day like any other. The shift was going as quick as could be expected, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The truck emitted its ear-piercing shriek as it came to a stop. The sound I'm beyond used to, which signaled when I needed to hop off the truck and chuck the unwanted waste inside yet another plastic container into the giant pungent truck that has become a part of my life. However, at this one particular house, in this one particular container, was a Lenovo laptop. I picked it up, and it seemed to be in pristine condition, besides the grease and little pieces of food that it had collected from sitting in a garbage can, but rubbing it off with my heavy work shirt, it was about as good as new. I naturally took a look at the house to see if the owner saw me take their laptop, and to my surprise, there was somebody standing by the window behind the partially open curtains. He was kind of peeking at me as if he didn't want me to see him. It was actually quite disturbing. Now I felt weird taking the laptop, so while still holding it, I took the garbage can and dumped it into the truck while pretending to do the same with the laptop. Instead, however, I placed the laptop on the back platform of the truck, returned the plastic pail to the curb, knocked on the side of the truck, and we moved along to the next house. That was where I handed my driver the laptop to hold onto. As I picked up the can at the next house, I noticed the guy from the previous house coming out to check his empty pail, and then turning to me and walking over to me. I returned the favor and met him halfway, and he just cut straight to the chase and asked me if I took his laptop. I felt my heart drop a bit for some reason, and stuttered at first, telling him I threw it in the back of the truck. What he asked me next shocked me. He asked if he could check the back of the truck to look for the laptop. Now I felt really awkward, but recovered by telling him firmly I have no time to play games, we are on a tight schedule. I simply walked back to the truck, dumped the contents of the pail into the truck, and we moved on. Luckily that block ended with that house, and we were able to sail away from that creep. The wind in my face had never felt so good. His reaction to my possibly taking his laptop only made me grow even more curious as to what was on it, which is why I lied and told him I threw it out in the first place. When my shift ended, I took the laptop to my car and drove home. On the way, I couldn't stop staring at that laptop. I just had to know what was on it. I pulled to the side of a deserted road and turned on the laptop, which surprisingly had battery left. The computer loaded up fast, like less than 30 seconds, and there was no password to the account, which was just titled Roy. I was wondering why he would throw this away. My question was answered very quickly. Scattered across the messy desktop were folders on top of folders, all titled very ambiguously. For example, one titled Fun Powder, another titled V288, and another titled Fruit Patch Boys. Inside all of the folders I clicked on were hundreds of videos and pictures of underage porn. I could only open about 4 before I started to feel sick to my stomach. I ended up dialing 911 and reporting this guy for child pornography possession. Now, the guy had pictures of himself on the computer, so I was not digging my own grave here by calling 911. However, as I should have guessed, the guy skipped town. I found a lot of messed up shit during my career, but never anything as bad as this. Maybe this guy would have gotten away with it had he just been smart and tucked the laptop underneath another bag.
A man and woman went to Las Vegas for their honeymoon and checked into a suite at a hotel. When they got to their room, they both detected a bad odor. The husband called down to the front desk and asked to speak to the manager. He explained that the room smelled very bad and they would like another suite. The manager apologized and told the man that they were all booked because of a convention. He offered to send them to a restaurant of their choice for lunch, compliments of the hotel, and said he was going to send a maid up to their room to clean and to try and get rid of the odor. After a nice lunch, the couple went back to their room. When they walked in, they could both still smell the horrible odor. Again, the husband called the front desk and told the manager that the room still smelled really bad. The manager told the man that they would try and find a suite at another hotel. He called every hotel on the strip, but every hotel was sold out because of the convention. The manager told the couple that they couldn't find them a room anywhere, but they would try and clean the room again. The couple wanted to see the sights and do a little gambling anyway, so they said they would give them 2 hours to clean and then they would be back. When the couple had left, the manager and all of the housekeeping staff went to the room to try and find what was making it smell so bad. They went through the entire suite and found nothing. So the maids put in new sheets, new towels, took down the curtains and put new ones up, cleaned the carpet, and cleaned the suite again using the strongest cleaning products they had. The couple came back 2 hours later to find the room still had a bad odor. The husband was so angry at this point, he decided to find whatever the smell was himself, so he started tearing the entire suite apart. As he pulled the top mattress off the box spring of the bed, he found a dead body of a woman. Me and my wife were on our honeymoon in Hawaii. We were on the island of Oahu, sitting on the beach. My wife got up to go to the bathroom, and when she got back, she told me that there was a creepy man watching her walk into the bathroom, and when she tried to walk out, he blocked her path. She only got away because there were 2 other people walking into the bathroom, so he got out of the way. I asked her what the man looked like, and she looked over, but unfortunately, she said he was gone. Our hotel was walking distance from the beach, so we got back quickly, but we made sure to report the man to a police officer we saw walking on the beach, and then we washed up before going out to eat. We ate at a fancy seafood place and did some walking around afterwards. Close to midnight, we finally went back to the room and began to wind down. Then we got a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole of the door and saw a man in a maid uniform standing outside. I opened the door and he immediately tried to let himself in. I pushed him back a bit, asking him what he wanted. He told me he left something in the room while cleaning earlier and needed to get it out. The only thing, we left a do not disturb sign on the door all day. Then I noticed he was making eye contact with my wife. My wife then screamed, "That's the man!" I didn't understand at first, but it was too late for that. The man had already lunged at me, holding my throat with one hand while reaching behind himself with another. He pulled out a knife and started swinging at me, and if it weren't for my wife coming over and smashing his face with the lamp, I would have been as good as dead. The commotion drew out all the inhabitants of the neighboring rooms. One of the women started freaking out and screaming, making the situation worse. We called the police, and so did the hotel. It turned into a huge, horrible scene, but we were just happy to be alive. We were questioned when the police arrived, and some of the other people around us claimed to have witnessed it all. We still don't know what kind of intentions this guy had, but if I had to guess, I would say he wanted to get to my wife. He must have been one very dumb person to think he would get away with something like this in such a public building. Me, my wife, and 2 kids were taking a drive all the way down to Florida from New York to go to Disney. We were in Georgia at the time, so close to entering Florida, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. I planned on finishing the drive that night just to save the money from a night at a hotel. My wife and kids were already long asleep, so I was trying to drive as smoothly as possible. On that quiet highway at 11 o'clock, there were hardly any other cars at all. In fact, I didn't see any lights until, up in the horizon, I saw 2 flashing red lights. Not police lights, more like SOS lights. I slowed down and proceeded with caution. Upon getting closer, I saw a car parked in the middle of the road, seemingly deliberately to block traffic, along with 2 cones placed on either side and 2 SOS lights flashing on the ground. Then, 2 hooded men of African American descent came from behind the car and started walking over to us. I put the car in reverse, ready to hightail it back the other way. One of the men came over to my window, and I cracked it open just enough to hear him speak. After asking him if he needed something, he said, "Yes, open the door." I shut the window, and that's when he began to reach for something in his pocket. I put the car back in drive and hit the gas. I drove over the cone and SOS light and past their car. About 1 minute later, I saw a pair of headlights coming up fast behind us. At this point, my wife was awake, confused and questioning me about the speed we were moving at. I told her not to make any loud noises before telling her that we were being followed. The car behind us began flashing its lights. And then there was a loud pop, and I felt the car losing control. I did the best I could to bring it under control, but there was a second loud pop, and the car began to drag. I told my wife to call 911, even though it was probably already too late. By now my kids were up, scared and complaining. I kept the car moving for as long as possible, but the car following us began ramming our trunk. My kids were crying, my wife was screaming at the police. I was sure we were dead. But by some stroke of luck, or more like a miracle, I heard a siren and saw red and blue flashing lights coming up in the distance behind our chasers. They veered off to the exit that we happened to be passing at that moment, and the police car followed them. I pulled over to the side of the road, took the phone away from my wife, and told the police everything. Upon inspection, I found out that our 2 back tires were blown, probably shot at, which I also told the police. 10 minutes later, a squad pulled up behind us, along with a AAA truck. They seemed rather thrilled to inform us that they caught the 2 men. Someone else had stumbled onto their little roadblock trap, but luckily managed to turn around and escape before calling the cops. When my sister was in her 20s, she was on vacation with her now husband, and one of their destinations was St. Martin. They had rented a car to get around and such. One day while doing sightseeing, they were on some side road that was rather isolated from any buildings or signs of civilization. It was a nice scenic route to take, but other than that, my sister tells me that it was a pretty dead road, so it probably didn't lead anywhere important. They eventually came up to something odd. There was the back of a car sticking out of the crops on the side of the road. As they pulled up closer, they could see it was some unbranded rusty neon blue car that had seemingly swerved into the crops. My sister's husband pulled up and stopped the car, telling my sister to wait in the car. He got out to check it out. From what my sister tells me, her husband looked through all the windows of the car for anybody at all. She watched as he then looked down and jumped back at something. She then got out of the car to see what was wrong. They both got down low to have a look underneath the rusty old car. What they saw was horrifying. There were two grown men with large knives in their hands, along with a bloody dead body laying between them. My sister's husband literally pushed her all the way back to the car and shoved her into her seat. The two men had crawled out from under the car and were now on their feet. He made it back into the car just in time to drive off down the road. They stopped at the nearest sign of civilization, making sure they weren't being followed, and called the police. Both of them seem to get uneasy when the topic is brought up, so we try not to remind them of it, but I can tell my sister has always been a bit different ever since this happened to her. I was 16 years old and the summer had just started. Our grandparents were treating the whole family to a 10-day cruise. It was a Royal Caribbean cruise, and we were going to Florida and the Bahamas. It was me, my two brothers, my sister and her boyfriend, my parents, my aunt and uncle, my two cousins, and my grandparents. I spent most of my time hanging out with my older brother, Rob, who was 20. We got to share a room together, even though it really wasn't allowed. We just claimed that our dad was staying with us in that room. So one night, me and my brother were in the nightclub of the ship. I snuck in using someone else's ship ID card. When I was in there, I noticed some older, creepy-looking man sitting by the wall, and I was sure he was staring intently at me. I made a point of moving around to see if he was really looking at me, and his head turned to face me wherever I went. I was feeling really uncomfortable, so I left right then and there. I coincidentally found my sister and her boyfriend sitting by the bar outside of the club. I sat down with them for a bit, and a few moments later, I saw the same man from in the club, now out by the bar, sitting across the room, and he was still staring at me. I looked away and pretended not to notice, but my heart was racing at this point. I contemplated whether or not to tell my sister, but I ended up not telling her. I don't know why. I left the bar and started speed walking back to my room. When I got to the stateroom halls, I was constantly glancing over my shoulder to make sure I wasn't being followed. I got to my room safely. I was extremely creeped out. I had a feeling this guy was some sort of perverted creep. I got a knock at the door, and I got a little nervous. I looked through the peephole and saw my brother, so I let him in. I did not see the strange man again until late the next night. My brother and I went with my sister and her boyfriend to one of the restaurants on board at like 1 in the morning. They weren't planning on going to sleep anytime soon, so I told them I was going to crash, and I walked back to the stateroom. But when I got there, I saw that the door to our room was cracked open a bit, and the light was on. I knew for sure we shut the door when we left, and there was no chance room service was in there at an hour like this. I proceeded with extreme caution and slowly pushed the door open completely. There was nobody in the room. I checked the bathroom, but it was empty too. All of our stuff was still in the same spot that I remembered it was in. I kind of just figured maybe Rob came back to the room for some reason when I wasn't with him and forgot to shut the door, so I just went to sleep. I woke up to darkness and the feeling of something brushing against my cheek. It was a hand. I pushed it away, telling Rob to knock it off. But when I noticed, even in the dark, beyond the figure by my bed, that Rob was in his bed. I let out the most blood-curdling scream you have ever heard. Rob jumped up and turned the lamp on, and there was the man from the club standing next to me. Rob jumped on him and began throwing punches. I joined in and we took down the man. It wasn't even a minute before frantic knocking came at the door. It was my parents. My dad held down the man while we called the customer service center. They sent up 2 security workers and he was sent to the jail of the ship for the remainder of the cruise. I'm not sure what happened to him afterwards, but this has emotionally scarred me, and I don't think I can ever go on another cruise again. I spent a solid weekend playing on the computer a few years ago, drinking a lot of ephedra and coffee and generally not sleeping much. Every so often I'd feel an itch on my arms, like a loose hair falling on them. I'd brush it off and go back to staring at the computer. As this itching was happening more frequently, I started wondering if I was just imagining things or delusional from the tea and insomnia, but then I noticed what appeared to be tiny spiders on my arms. Am I going crazy? Are these drug bugs or what? And I went back to the screen. Then I saw the strings of thin webs glistening in the light, and tiny spiders floating past my vision. They were real indeed. I noticed a hole in the ceiling where they appeared to be falling from. I blasted a can of wasp spray into the hole and hundreds of these little spiders began pouring out, streaming from their webs. Hundreds of them, all over me. I got home from work late one night, was walking onto my front stoop, when I walked right into this huge spider web. At first I didn't think much of it until I looked down, and saw about 20 to 30 baby spiders all over me. I started freaking out, then noticed the parents sitting on my door. They were huge, almost the size of a hand. So of course I didn't want to use the front door. I run to my back door, throw off all my clothes and jump in the shower. I then watch as the spiders began falling out of my hair. I got home late and my phone was about to die. I always plugged my phone into the outlet under my bed. I collapsed on my bed and reached my hand under my bed to try and find my phone's charger. But what I found instead was some kind of squishy sack. I began poking and squeezing it, when all of a sudden, I felt hundreds of little legs poking me and crawling up my arm. I pulled my arm up from under my bed and then screamed when I saw probably 30 baby spiders crawling up my arm. I shook them off, told my parents, and jumped in the shower right away. Turned out it was a baby spider sack, and there was an even bigger mother spider living under my bed. I awoke from my deep sleep in the middle of the night to the feeling of something huge crawling around in my bed. Still half asleep, I jumped out and started freaking out, assuming it was a spider or something. With one swift motion of bravery, I flung the covers off the bed, but nothing was there. I started to think that I was just feeling it as part of a dream, and I continued to feel it until I fully woke up, so I went back to sleep. The next night, I felt the same exact thing. I felt it on my arms this time instead of my legs. Again, I jumped out of bed, still not in the fully awake state of mind. I was again freaking out and ran to my parents' room to get my dad. He was never afraid of spiders. He came to my room and flung off the sheets and covers. There was nothing there. I was convinced at this point that it had something to do with my dreams, or something was wrong with me, because there was no spider in my bed whatsoever. However, the next night, it happened again. The feeling of something huge crawling on my arm. Freaking out again, in my half-awake, confused state of mind, I once again jumped out of bed and flung off the covers, but this time I was greeted by the sight of the biggest spider I'd ever seen. Bigger than a tarantula. It quickly crawled under my bed and out of sight as I screamed and went off to my parents' room again to tell my dad. This happened when I was staying with my grandma for the weekend. My uncle still lived with her, and occasionally I would stay over to work with my uncle for some good pay. Anyway, I was exhausted after a long day's work with my uncle, so I basically fell into the rickety old guest bed upstairs. I watched some TV for about 10 minutes before just deciding to go to sleep. It was a hot night. You know how on hot nights you constantly have to flip over the pillow to the cooler side? Well, when I did that, I put my head back down on the pillow. I didn't feel the soft, cushiony pillow on my cheek. I felt a furry, indescribable object press up on my face. I jumped up in response to it and saw a giant, full-grown huntsman spider sitting on my pillow. I fell to the opposite side of the bed, and I guess the shaking scared the thing because it took off at the speed of light. Where it went, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure the thing is still in my grandma's house.